Chapter 1. Momonga stepped out of what was known as the Round Table Room. Every guild member possessed a special ring, one reserved solely for their use. Anyone who wore it would be instantly transported to this room upon logging into the game, unless unusual conditions applied. This chamber was the designated return point for all guild members. But Momonga knew none of them would be coming back. Not now, not ever. As the final moments of the game ticked away, the vast and majestic great underground tomb of Nazarick held only one presence, Momonga. He was alone, completely alone. And yet, somewhere, another guild member was still online. Momonga summoned the screen, his fingers moving with practiced ease. It displayed his friend list, and there, glowing faintly, was the name of the one other player still online during the game's final moments. Rex Tempest. He wasn't just another player, he was the strongest in the game, a legend even among legends. Even the dreaded world enemies treated him with caution. Rex stood alone at the pinnacle, and more importantly, he was the only human ever accepted into the Guild of Ains Ul Gaun. Unlike most human players, who hunted those who chose the heteromorphic race, Rex had done the opposite. He protected them. That act of defiance earned him the friendship of Momonga and the others. He fought beside them, helped build the guild from the ground up, and stood by them as they rose to become the most powerful force in the game. But those glory days had long since faded. One by one, the others stopped playing. The world moved on, yet Rex remained, and as time passed, he sank even deeper into the game. In the year 2138 AD, a common term echoed throughout the gaming world, DMMORPG. It stood for Dive Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. These advanced games were accessed through a dedicated console connected directly to the brain via a neuronal nano interface, an intricate intracerebral nanocomputer network, born from the fusion of cutting-edge cybernetics and nanotechnology. This revolutionary system allowed players to dive fully into virtual worlds, experiencing them as though they were real. Sight, sound, touch, all simulated with near-perfect precision. These were games that allowed players to enter virtual worlds and experience them as if they were real life. Among the countless DMMORPGs flooding the market, one stood head and shoulders above the rest. Yggdrasil. Released in 2126 after years of painstaking development, it quickly rose to prominence. At the time, many games offered immersive experiences, but Yggdrasil had something different, something that set it apart. Its core selling point was simple, yet revolutionary: player freedom. The game featured over 2,000 basic and advanced job classes. Each class had a maximum of 15 levels. To reach the overall level cap of 100, players were required to take at least 7 different classes. However, there were no limits on how many classes a player could select, so long as they met each class's prerequisites. Technically, a player could take 100 different classes at level 1 each, though such a build would be wildly inefficient. Still, the system's design offered incredible flexibility. Because of this freedom, it was nearly impossible to create identical characters, unless someone went out of their way to do so. In addition, players could purchase a range of creator tools, sold separately, that allowed for full customization of their experience. Armor, weaponry, flavor text, appearance, and other cosmetic details could all be tailored to a player's exact preferences. The game offered more than just depth, it offered scale. A vast playing field stretched out before its users, composed of 9 distinct worlds: Asgard, Alfheim, Vanaheim, Nidavellir, Midgard, Jotunheim, Niflheim, Helheim, and Muspelheim. Each realm held its own mysteries, challenges, and lore, forming a massive universe ripe for exploration. With its massive world, countless job classes, and freely customizable appearances, Yggdrasil offered players an unparalleled canvas for creativity. These features ignited the imaginations of Japanese players in particular, sparking what would later be hailed as a stylistic revolution. The game didn't just attract attention, it reshaped how people approached character design and personal expression in virtual worlds. It became so iconic that, in Japan, the mere mention of DMMORPG would instantly bring one name to mind: Yggdrasil. Even with a massive player base, only 30% of the 9 realms had been officially explored. That left a staggering 70% untouched, or so the public believed. In truth, an additional 40% had already been charted, quietly and relentlessly, by one man, Rex. While others formed parties or stuck to safe zones, he had ventured far beyond, diving deeper into the unknown. Each realm was vast, 3 times the size of Tokyo, making full exploration a daunting task. What made it even harder was the danger. The farther one traveled from the world's center, the more hostile everything became. Wandering monsters were only part of the threat. The terrain itself turned against players, twisting into treacherous hazards that tested not only strength but strategy and endurance. True to his title as the strongest, Rex had ventured where no other players dared to tread. He had accomplished feats that seemed impossible, achievements so extraordinary that the game's developers rewarded him directly, recognizing he had done something they never imagined a single player could. But that wasn't what occupied Momonga's thoughts now. What mattered to him in this moment was simple. Rex, though still officially part of Ain's Ulgaon, hadn't shown up to say goodbye. Still, Momanga couldn't blame him. After everything Rex had seen, after all the wonders he'd uncovered, perhaps the guild had simply faded from his memory. And in a way, that was understandable. Far, far away, a white-haired man stood face to face with a towering giant formed entirely of molten lava. In the giant's massive hands burned a blazing sword of fire. All around them lay the fading remains of countless fire monsters, charred, lifeless, and slowly disintegrating into nothingness. The lava giant was covered in wounds, its body cracked and leaking molten blood. Its HP hovered just above 0. And yet, the one responsible for all this destruction, the white-haired man, stood untouched, without so much as a scratch. With a thunderous roar, the giant raised its sword and brought it crashing down. The blade should have struck true. But just before it could reach its target, the sword halted mid-swing. Space and time twisted around it, bending beneath the weight of the power and searing heat behind the strike. Even so, the sword slowly began to break through, inching past the invisible barrier protecting the white-haired man. But the white-haired man, Rex, had already anticipated this. In that split second, as the molten blade strained against the barrier of space and time, he moved. Effortlessly, he dodged the attack with precision and soared above the giant, preparing to unleash his final move. Curse technique. Hollow Purple. His voice rang out as he cast the devastating spell, an advanced spell that merged 2 opposing infinities into one. What followed was a surge of pure destruction, an attack that unraveled everything it touched down to the atomic level. The giant braced itself, raising its sword in a desperate defense. But before the overwhelming might of Hollow Purple, all resistance was meaningless. The attack landed. The giant's HP plummeted to 0 in an instant. System message. You have killed the world boss of Muspelheim, Surtur, on your first attempt. Congratulations. You have defeated all world bosses and completed the quest, Slayer of World Bosses. Niflheim, Nidhogg, Midgard, Ratatoskr, Asgard, Odin, Vanaheim, Njord, Alfheim, Freyr, Svartalheim, Eitri, Niavellir, Brokkr and Sindri. Helheim, Hel, Muspelheim, Surtur. Rex let out a quiet sigh as he glanced over the list. With each boss he had slain, he'd earned a reward, powerful artifacts like Odin's Eye, and other legendary items tied to the myths of each realm. It had taken him an eternity to finish what was, on the surface, a single quest. But now, at long last, he had completed it, just in time for the game's final moments. Reward gained. Godly Human, Eyes of Infinity, Vector Monarch, Job Class Fusion, Infinite Potential. Total level, 100. Racial level, Human. Job level, Sorcerer 15. High Sorcerer 10. Wizard 15. High Wizard 10. Space-Time Wizard 5. Space-Time Sorcerer 5. Limitless 5. Monk 10. Marital Lord 10. Striker 5. World Champion 5. World Disaster 5. Approximate status. HP. Exceeds limit. MP. Exceeds limit. Phi. Atk. 85. Phi. Def. 85. Agility. Exceeds limit. Mag. Atk. Exceeds limit. Mag. Def. Exceeds limit. Resistance. Exceeds limit. Special ability. Exceeds limit. Total. Unknown. The stat cap in the game was 100. Anything beyond that would simply display as exceeds the limit when checking one's status screen. Rex hadn't always been this overpowered. His current strength was the result of many factors, one of the most significant being the life he lived before this one. This wasn't his first life. Back in his first life, he often found himself daydreaming about getting hit by a truck or some freak accident, anything that might whisk him away to a world filled with magic, swords, and grand adventures. Yes, he knew how insane it sounded. But reality bored him, and Earth just felt too dull. So, he prepared, mentally, physically, even emotionally, on the off chance that his dream might one day come true. So he trained, he read whatever he could, trying to expand his knowledge as much as possible. He wasn't a genius by any means, so he focused on practical things, how guns worked, the principles behind nuclear bombs, and other simple but impactful systems. He even picked up the basics of farming, engineering, and survival. After all, if his wish ever came true, he wanted to be ready. And then, one day, it happened. An airplane, yes, an actual airplane, fell from the sky. The force of its descent sent a powerful gust of wind slamming into the side of his apartment building. In an instant, he was dead. The next thing he knew, he had transmigrated into the future. What stunned him most wasn't the technology or the people, it was the world itself. It was straight out of an anime. He didn't hesitate. He threw everything, time, effort, and will, into mastering the game that ruled this world. His past training paid off. It gave him a sharp edge, allowing him to adapt quickly and make a name for himself within the game. Combined with the wealth the former host of the body was born into, he was able to invest heavily, pouring real money into the game and accelerating his rise to the top. Before long, he became the strongest player. His ultimate goal throughout the game was to obtain a specific world item, one powerful enough to force the developers to alter some aspect of the game itself. It was through this item that he secured the job class, Limitless. Of course, he hadn't stopped there. He had also set his sights on another powerful class, Vector Monarch. But instead of simply granting it, the system offered him a challenge: defeat all 9 of the world-class bosses. It was a monumental task, but the rewards promised with each victory made it worth the effort. So he did just that. For years, Rex pushed himself to the absolute limit, venturing into the most dangerous corners of the world, where death was always one misstep away. He nearly died more times than he could count. Not even his powerful job class could shield him from every threat. But he endured, and in the end, he completed the quest. Godly humans, a rare, evolved state of humanity achieved by breaking through the natural limits of ordinary humans and ascending to godhood. Unlike standard humans, who received 1 skill point per level, godly humans earned 3. That's nice, Rex thought to himself. In the game, humans only received 1 skill point per level. By the time a player reached level 100, they would have just 100 skill points to allocate. Rex had been no different. Every single point he earned went into developing his job classes. Other races, however, had the advantage. A goblin, classified as a demihuman, received 2 skill points per level. A skeleton mage, a heteromorphic race, gained 3. These additional points weren't just numbers, they were power. Skill points could be used to evolve racial classes, unlocking new abilities and forms. With more points to invest, non-human races could strengthen themselves far more quickly, reaching heights that humans struggled to achieve. The fact that godly humans granted him 3 skill points per level was nothing short of incredible. Compared to the standard 1 point, it was a game changer. Unfortunately, the timing couldn't have been worse. The game was about to end, and Rex knew he wouldn't get the chance to fully explore the potential of this powerful race. Eye of Infinity, a special reward from the game developers. You loved Gojo so much, the description read, and so did we. This job class was a replica of the legendary 6 Eyes, reimagined for the game. With it, your energy control had reached absurd levels. You could manipulate MP down to the atomic scale, making spellcasting nearly costless. In fact, any MP used was instantly recovered, often exceeding what was spent. For all practical purposes, your mana was limitless. Vector Monarch, a powerful job class that grants the user the ability to perceive and manipulate all vectors, motion, force, energy, and more. This control extends across both offense and defense, allowing the user to redirect incoming attacks, manipulate movement, and shape the environment itself. It demands constant, real-time analysis and rapid response, making the wielder a deadly force in both close quarters and long-range combat. Job Class Fusion, a rare ability that allows the player to combine 2 existing job classes into a single, entirely new class. A special gift from the developers themselves. Unfortunately, with the end of the game drawing near, there's little time left to truly explore its potential. This seems a bit too good to be true, Rex muttered, eyes narrowing as he read through the final reward. Infinite potential, reset your level back to 0, but with a twist. This time, there is no level cap. You can continue leveling indefinitely. With each level gained, the number of skill points and stat points you earn will double. All existing job classes and racial traits are retained, but they will be locked until you reach the required levels to access them again. 10 comments 0 vote. Chapter 2. This is a bit too overpowered, Rex thought as he reviewed the details again. In the game, gaining stats wasn't simple, it relied on two main factors. The first was race. Humans, for example, received just one stat point per level, in addition to their single skill point. The second factor was job classes. Job classes were divided into 3 tiers: basic, high, and rare. Basic job classes grant 2 stat points per level. High job classes provided 4 stat points per level. Rare job classes offered 5 or more stat points per level, depending on their type. The striker job class was classified as rare, and though it maxed out at just level 5, it granted a total of 25 stat points once it reached the max level. In comparison, a basic job class, despite capping at level 15, only provided 30 stat points in total. That meant it was far more efficient to invest skill points into rare job classes. With fewer levels, they offered nearly the same, or even greater, returns in raw stats. Then there was Limitless. It stood at the top of them all, offering a staggering 8 stat points per level, the highest any job class in the game could grant. Well, let's do this. With only a few minutes left before the game's end, Rex moved quickly. First, he triggered his evolution into a godly human. To his relief, the transformation granted him 3 skill points, just as the description promised. He also accepted the new job class, the Eye of Infinity. Wasting no time, Rex accepted his newly unlocked job class, Vector Monarch, and immediately invested 2 skill points into it. The remaining point was allocated to his racial class. Rex equipped a set of gear he didn't mind losing, then calmly allowed a nearby monster to kill him. As expected, he respawned, but at the cost of 5 levels. He didn't care. Immediately after, he pulled out a world-class item, a rare artifact designed to store excess HP and convert it into experience. Using it, he rapidly regained the lost XP and returned to level 100 in moments. With that came a fresh batch of skill points, 15 in total. He used them without hesitation, maxing out every level of his active job classes, as well as his racial class. Godly Human reached level 5, unlocking new traits and abilities, though, unfortunately, there was no time left to explore what they were. Next, Rex activated Job Class Fusion, combining Limitless and Vector Monarch into one. The result was breathtaking. A radiant surge of energy pulsed across the screen as the two powerful classes merged, giving birth to something entirely new, Apex Singularity. It wasn't just a rare class. It transcended that tier entirely. A super rare job class, one of a kind. Apex Singularity. This class represents the ultimate convergence of spatial and vector control into a single, transcendent form. The user no longer merely interacts with the world, they become a localized omnipotent force, capable of redefining the very rules governing motion, force, and matter itself. Requirements. Godly Human, Eye of Infinity. Rex was stunned. Apex Singularity had no level requirement. Most powerful job classes demanded a high enough level just to unlock, yet this one bypassed that entirely. He wanted to scan it, to understand more about this job class, but there was no time. The next moment, he underwent rebirth. In the blink of an eye, he respawned, only now at level 1. All his gear was automatically returned to his inventory, locked away since he was now too low level to equip it. He barely had a second to process it. Time ran out. The game was supposed to shut down. But it didn't. Instead, Rex opened his eyes and found himself lying in a forest. Completely naked. Glancing around, Rex was immediately struck by how sharp his vision had become. It wasn't just improved, it was flawless. He had 360-degree sight, able to perceive even the slightest disturbances in the air around him. When he focused on a distant point, he noticed something that left him speechless, an ant crawling up a tree, kilometers away. Yet, to him, it looked as if it were right beneath his feet. And it wasn't just his eyes. His other senses had sharpened as well. His ears picked up the faintest sounds, painting a vivid picture of the world through sound alone. His nose detected the subtlest sense, layering even more detail onto his awareness. Even the tiniest vibrations in the air registered through his skin, giving him another way to see, though none of it compared to the sheer clarity of his vision. Rex shifted his attention to the status window and was stunned when it actually appeared before him. He hadn't expected that. From what he remembered, Momonga couldn't summon a status screen after the game ended in the anime. That feature seemed to vanish completely once reality took hold. But then again, he recalled a moment when Momonga used a screen interface to manage the guild. Maybe things were different for him, or maybe this world had its own rules. Either way, the screen was there, hovering in front of him. Total level: 1. Racial level: Godly Human. Job level: Sorcerer 0. High Sorcerer 0. Wizard 0. High Wizard 0. Space-Time Wizard 0. Space-Time Sorcerer 0. Limitless 0. Monk 0. Marital Lord 0. Striker 0. World Champion 0. World Disaster 0. Vector Monarch 0. Eye of Infinity 0. Apex Singularity 0. Available skill points 6. Approximate status: HP 1. MP 0. Phi. Atk 0. Phi. Def 0. Agility 0. Mag. Atk 0. Mag. Def 0. Resistance 0. Special ability 0. Available stat points 5. I start with 5 stats. Nice, Rex thought, eyes scanning the display. Back in the game, new players usually started with just 0, 1, or 2 stat points, excluding the default 1 HP everyone was given at the beginning. What really helped jumpstart a character's progress were the starter weapons granted at the start. Why does Godly Human not have levels? He wondered, frowning. In the game, it clearly had levels, he'd just seen it a moment ago. But now, here in this new reality, it seemed different. Ah, looks like I've been given the full benefits of the race from the start. No need to level it up anymore. Nice. He turned his focus to the status screen again, ready to examine the perks that came with being a godly human. Godly Human, the highest tier of the human race. With it comes unmatched potential, granting the ability to learn nearly every type of magic in existence. In addition to this, Godly Humans receive 3 skill points and 3 stat points per level, allowing them to rival, and even surpass, heteromorphic races in growth and flexibility. They are also immortal and possess exceptionally high HP regeneration, enough to compete with even advanced healing magic. Godly Human skills: Divine Instant IV, grants the ability to comprehend all forms of magic. This includes the identification, breakdown, and analysis of spells, enchantments, and magical constructs across all known schools of magic. Aura of Divinity IV, emits a powerful aura that inspires courage in allies and instills fear in enemies. The effect intensifies with level and emotional state. Divine Ascendancy, bestows complete immunity to aging, disease, and all forms of mind-altering effects, both magical and natural. God's Tongue, allows the user to understand and speak fluently all languages, both written and spoken, regardless of origin. Enhanced Healing, grants passive regeneration inside and outside of combat. The rate of healing scales with level, making recovery nearly instantaneous at high levels. Godly Skin, provides immunity to spells and items that are beneath a certain rank or tier relative to the user's current level. Only abilities or artifacts meeting the required threshold can bypass this defense. Create low-tier Godly Being 15 per day. Create mid-tier Godly Being 8 per day. Create high-tier Godly Being 1 per day. Create low-tier Angelic Being 20 per day allows the creation of low-tier angels. Create mid-tier Angelic Being 12 per day allows the creation of mid-tier angels. Create high-tier Angelic Being 3 per day allows the creation of high-tier angels. Wisdom of the Gods, increases the maximum number of spells the user can learn. Grant an extra 30 spells to be earned every 10 levels. Godly Sense, grants the ability to detect the presence of evil, divine, or righteous beings. God's Blessing, allows the user to sacrifice their own HP to trigger any effect they deem necessary, ranging from granting immortality to bestowing immense strength. However, this ability cannot be used on the caster themselves. I was wondering why my brain wasn't being overwhelmed by the sea of information I'm taking in. I'm now a god, Rex said with a smirk. I wonder if this will change my personality or something. Shaking off the thought, he turned his attention to something more immediate, how best to allocate his skill points and stat points in this new, uncharted reality. In the end, Rex allocated 2 stat points into MP. With the Eye of Infinity, his mana regeneration was limitless, making even those 2 points more than enough to sustain his spells. The rest of his stat points went straight into magical attack. Without this, any form of non-physical power he unleashed would be useless. The higher this stat, the greater the power he could unleash. Next, he turned to Apex Singularity, wasting no time in leveling it up to the max level 5. To his surprise, each level granted 12 stat points, far more than any class he'd encountered before. In total, he gained a staggering 75 stat points. That was impressive. With everything set, Rex sat down and began browsing through the spell list tied to Apex Singularity. Since he was still only level 1, he could learn just 3 spells for now. The first one immediately caught his eye. Redirection, a passive skill that automatically redirects all forms of harm to the original attacker, or to a target of your choosing. Whether the damage is physical, magical, or even spiritual in nature, this ability reflects it completely. Even world-class items are not exempt. This was the ultimate defense, one that didn't just block, it turned the enemy's power against them. Weakness. While incredibly powerful, redirection has its limits. If an attack is an unknown vector to the user, it will still be redirected, as long as it's traveling through space-time. Similarly, if the vector is known, it will be redirected even if it bypasses space-time. However, if the attack is an unknown vector and does not travel through space-time, it can bypass this otherwise absolute defense. Additionally, redirection only affects attacks. Spells or effects that cause sleep, confusion, or similar non-damaging effects will not trigger it. If you're unconscious, the skill still activates, but redirects attacks randomly, and at the extreme cost of 100 XMP per activation. Okay, I'll learn this, Rex thought. Sure, it only worked against attacks, but that wasn't a problem. Wasn't he already immune to mind-altering effects anyway? Unreachable, a passive skill that renders the user untouchable by any spell, force, or effect they choose to reject. Unlike Infinity, which functions by infinitely dividing the distance between the user and an incoming attack, preventing it from ever reaching zero, Unreachable works by targeting the range of all external effects. If a spell only functions within 10 meters, this ability makes the user appear to be infinitely distant to that spell, even if they're standing directly beside the caster. It achieves this by manipulating space and time, not through division, but by multiplying distances, making the user fundamentally unreachable by anything bound to range or proximity. Weakness. This passive defense can be bypassed by attacks or phenomena that ignore or destroy space-time entirely. I don't know about this one, Rex thought as he weighed the pros and cons of Unreachable. On one hand, it would help cover the weaknesses of redirection, especially against effects that weren't considered direct attacks. But on the other hand, the vulnerability to space-time-based attacks made him uneasy. Still, after a moment of thought, he went ahead and learned the skill. That left him with one final slot to fill, at least until he leveled up again. Vector Blue. By merging the power of space-time and vector manipulation, this spell creates a dense blue orb that pulls in all matter and energy within its radius. Kinetic force, magical energy, mental energy, everything is absorbed. Even the very space people stand in is dragged toward the orb, giving no chance for escape or defense. Though its range is limited, anything, or anyone, caught within it is faced with absolute destruction, unless they can react immediately with a countermeasure. This is a bit too overpowered, Rex thought as he selected the spell without hesitation. He didn't even bother checking the MP cost. If he did, he would have realized that this spell was something beyond even a super-tier magic. In Yggdrasil, super-tier magic acts more like a special ability rather than an actual spell. Magic casters can unleash it without consuming any of their MP. If a magic caster has 100 megapixels, they could use a first-tier spell 100 times. However, he could only use 10th-tier spells, not more than 10 times. Super-tier magic limit 1 to 4 times a day, so what would magic above super-tier look like? Well, let's go level up before finding out just where I am. With that thought, Rex sprang to his feet. In the next instant, he launched forward, rocketing through the forest toward the nearest monster he could sense, without a moment's pause, but he soon found out that he wasted his 3 skill slots on spells he couldn't use because he wasn't of a high enough level. For some reason, it didn't tell him of the requirement until then. Why did it even let him learn something he couldn't use? 14 comments 0 vote. Chapter 3. Approximate status. HP. 18. MP. 2. Phi. ATK. 40. Phi. Def. 40. Agility. 51. Mag. ATK. 3. Mag. Def. 0. Resistance. 10. Special ability. 0. Total. 164. What the fuck? Rex snapped in frustration, staring at his status window. After everything, he hadn't leveled up. Despite wiping out countless monsters with ease, his experience bar hadn't budged. With his current stats, he was absurdly overpowered, still only level 1, yet his numbers rivaled those of a level 30 player. The main reason for that was his job class, Apex Singularity. Upon leveling it to level 5, he had gained a total of 75 stat points. Combined with his talent buff, which doubled all stats gained, that brought the total to 150 stat points, all at level 1. He had 6 skill points total. 5 of them had been used to max out Apex Singularity, granting him 150 stat points thanks to his talent buff. The remaining stat boost came from another job class, World Champion, which granted 8 stat points per level until it maxed out. Rex glanced at the massive orc he had just slain, its body still sprawled on the forest floor. The kill had been effortless. In his hand was a large, ordinary sword, one of many pieces of gear he had stored away. This particular weapon required no job class to wield, making it a basic grade sword with no stat bonuses. Rex sighed as he turned to face the rest of the orcs, each one ranging from level 5 and above. Just killing a single orc of that level should have been enough to push him up at least 1 level, yet, despite his overwhelming talent, it wasn't that simple. His high potential came with steep requirements. Without wasting another second, he lunged forward, cutting through orc after orc without hesitation. Even when they turned to flee, Rex didn't let up. He gave them no chance to escape, showing no mercy as he carved through the horde. At last, after hundreds of orcs fell, a notification appeared. Leveled up. 1 right pointing arrow 2. Gained. 6 stat points, 6 skill points. By time, now I have 3 new spells I can learn, Rex thought, eyes drifting over the list of available job classes. After a bit of thought, though, he chose not to spend those slots on spells. Instead, he decided to pick up a completely new job class. After all, he could always regain the job classes he'd unlocked in the past. What mattered now was building something that best suited his current self, his current circumstances. So, he made his choice. Fighter. It was a simple class, nothing rare or grand. A base tier job class. Why choose it? Because Fighter would let Rex learn basic, low-level combat spells appropriate for someone at his level. It also allowed him to freely equip and use weapons, something that could prove useful now more than ever. He didn't know what this world would throw at him next, and in that uncertainty, having a solid, grounded class felt like the best move. He only needed to reach level 10 to accumulate a total of 60 skill points. There was no reason to rush things. With the way his growth was scaling, he had all the time he needed. So, instead of pressing forward recklessly, he calmly selected his newest job class and leveled it up to level 3. The remaining skill points were allocated to World Champion, bringing it to level 4 and rewarding him with 24 stat points, a solid boost that further widened the gap between him and anyone else at his level. The next job class should be one that lets me equip armor, Rex said to himself, voice low as his hand slipped into his inventory. From the swirling interface of his storage space, he pulled out a spear, not just any weapon, but a world-class item radiating power. It was only natural. As the strongest player in the game, and someone who had spent years venturing into its most treacherous, undocumented zones, Rex had acquired more world-class items than most players even knew existed. He had so many that his entire main gear set consisted of them, leaving his inventory packed with reserves of overwhelming gear. What were world-class items, you ask? In the lore of Yggdrasil, the world tree once bore a countless number of leaves, each one vast, radiant, and brimming with power. But one day, a monstrous entity appeared, an overwhelming force that began devouring the leaves of the tree. One after another, they were consumed, destroyed beyond recovery. Eventually, only 9 leaves remained. These became the foundation for the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. The world-class items were said to be forged from the remnants of those final leaves, each imbued with the essence of a world. Their existence represented the last fragments of primal creation, shards of infinite power. According to legend, the same monster that devoured the original leaves would occasionally reappear, drawn by the existence of these items, launching attacks against the 9 worlds to claim them once more. In the entire game of Yggdrasil, there were only 200 world-class items. Each possessed a unique ability, some so potent they could destabilize the entire balance of the game. Of course, not every world item held that kind of influence. Some had more limited or situational effects. But even so, ownership alone was enough to elevate a player's status to the highest tier in Yggdrasil. Out of the 200 world-class items that existed in Yggdrasil, Rex possessed 5. Well, he used to. Now, he had 15. The missions he completed weren't just about finishing objectives or unlocking titles. Each world boss he defeated had rewarded him with far more than just experience or stat boosts. By the end, Rex had collected 9 shards of fear, world-class items tied to the legends of each realm. From Asgard, he obtained Gungnir, the legendary weapon of Odin. A world-class item in every sense, Gungnir embodied the very concept of absolute strike. Its 2 main abilities were devastating. It could ignore all forms of durability and immunity, piercing through even the most fortified defenses. Once thrown, it would always hit its target, regardless of distance, obstacles, or evasive maneuvers. From Niflheim, Rex acquired the Shield of the Abyss, a world-class item forged from the remnants of Nihagr and the shattered roots of Yggdrasil itself. Its origins alone made it one of the most powerful defensive artifacts in the game. Considered among the strongest shields in existence, it wasn't just designed to block harm, it could shield its bearer from anything, whether it was damage, curses, mental effects, or even environmental changes. It was, in essence, the ultimate shield, a guardian forged from death and decay. From Midgard, Rex obtained the 10 rings, 10 individual world-class items, each worn on a separate finger. What made these rings truly unique wasn't just their singular power, but their modular design. Each ring held a list of selectable effects, allowing Rex to choose and customize their traits to suit different situations. But more importantly, when all 10 rings were equipped simultaneously, they would trigger a bonus effect, one so mysterious and potentially powerful that even Rex didn't know what it was. Unfortunately, he couldn't equip them yet. The requirements were too steep for his current level, and until those conditions were met, the rings couldn't be equipped. The list of world-class items Rex possessed went on and on. But for now, the only one he could equip was Gungnir. Unlike the others, Gungnir had no level requirement. It didn't demand excessive stats or rare conditions. All it required was that the wielder possess a job class capable of using spears, and more importantly, that the spear itself deemed the user worthy. Rex met both conditions without issue. The weapon had accepted him without hesitation. With Gungnir in hand, Rex wasted no time. His eyes locked onto a target, an orc just within his sensory range. He raised the spear, then hurled it forward. The weapon didn't just fly, it ripped through space, disappearing from his hand and reappearing in the next instant. A sharp crack echoed through the trees as Gungnir embedded itself in the orc's forehead, killing it instantly. It uses a lot of MP to use that one skill, Rex thought, watching his MP drop sharply, from 2 to 1. Given his high energy control, such a drastic cost should have been impossible. But then the answer clicked into place. He remembered Odin, how even he hadn't thrown Gungnir so carelessly during their fight. The reason was simple, the energy cost was too steep. If I lose 1 megapixel with every throw, whatever, he thought, brushing it off without much concern. He still had 66 stat points available. Without hesitation, he dumped all of them into MP. Was it wasteful? Maybe. But that didn't matter. He didn't need to conserve resources if every throw meant an instant kill. As long as a strong enough target appeared within range, Rex could bring it down in one shot. The only reason Odin hadn't one-shot him with Gungnir was because Rex had been equipped with a world-class item that nullified the effects of other world-class items. But even that wasn't an absolute safeguard. World-class items operated under unique conditions. Once an effect was triggered, it couldn't be casually countered. A nullification effect only worked if it was already equipped before the opposing item's ability took hold. For instance, if someone didn't have a world-class item equipped at the moment the spear was thrown, then pulling one out afterward would be pointless, unless that item specifically possessed a defensive ability capable of shielding you. Still completely naked, Rex extended his palm outward. From far across the forest, Gingnir dislodged itself from the orc's skull and tore through the air, returning to his hand. And so, the slaughter began. Rex moved through the forest like a storm, killing every monster he could sense, one after another. When he ran out of prey, he simply advanced into the next area. He didn't spare a thought for the ecological balance or whether his actions might draw attention. None of that mattered. He was here to level up, and level up he did. 1 week after arriving in this new world, Rex stood at the summit of a tall mountain, the wind cutting across his skin, his eyes fixed on the horizon. In his outstretched hand, Gingnir shimmered as it returned once again. He glanced toward his status window, the numbers confirming what he already felt in his bones. He had finally reached level 10. Total level, 10. Racial level, godly human. Job level, sorcerer 1. High sorcerer 1. Wizard 1. High wizard 1. Space-time wizard 5. Space-time sorcerer 5. Limitless 5. Monk 1. Marital lord 1. Striker 5. World champion 5. World disaster 5. Vector monarch 5. Eye of infinity 5. Apex singularity 5. Fighter 3. Keymaster. Spiritual 9. Available skill points 0. Approximate status. HP 100. MP 100. Phi. ATK 100. Phi. Def 100. Agility 100. Mag. ATK 3. Mag. Def 0. Resistance 44. Special ability 44. Total 588. With these stats, I should be around the same level of power as someone at level 90 or so, and all of this without my gear, Rex muttered, letting out a quiet sigh at just how overpowered he'd become. Even he had to admit it was a bit ridiculous. Exhaling slowly, he shifted his focus ahead. Within moments, he sensed 13 people approaching his location. Their movement patterns, subtle fluctuations in energy, and scattered presence across the terrain made it easy to detect them. He wasn't surprised. A few days ago, he'd already encountered a group of humans, individuals who had been effortlessly defeated by him. At the time, he had fully intended to kill them, but in the end, he hadn't followed through. Despite everything, Rex came to a quiet realization. He wasn't as cold-hearted as he once believed he was. It looked like word had spread, rumors of a lone man who had wiped out every monster in the forest single-handedly. A man who, strangely enough, had been asking odd questions about the world around him. Rex didn't bother moving. He remained seated atop the mountain, calm and unmoving, simply watching as the group of 13 approached. They reached him quickly. Each one slowed as they drew near, their eyes locking onto him, and every expression twisted into varying shades of confusion, suspicion, or awkward disbelief. After all, Rex was still completely butt naked. A giant, a lowly, an elf, a black knight, a white knight, a dwarf, an assassin, a necromancer, a dark cultist, a magic swordsman, a priest, a holy magician, and to top it all off, their weakest member, Rex said with a relaxed smile, casually sizing each of them up. His tone was calm, even amused, though his sharp gaze lingered on two specific figures, the one in white armor and the lowly standing beside him. Something about them felt familiar. He was certain he had seen them before. "You're a player?" The one Rex had identified as the weakest suddenly asked, his voice tinged with shock. 6 comments 0 vote. Pissed. Download the app for additional rewards. More events, more perks. Winning you more free perks. Download now. Itachi 1010. Download app now. Chapter 4. Rex's eyebrow lifted slightly, caught off guard by the unexpected question. "How did you know?" Rex asked, his mind already piecing things together. That man in the so-called white armor, on closer inspection, it was platinum. And the lowly beside him, it all lined up. If the weakest member among them was truly a player, then there was only one conclusion to draw. He was standing before the 13 heroes. "You said, lowly, that term doesn't exist in this world," the young man replied. Rex stared at him, momentarily speechless. Then, slowly, he nodded in understanding. "Weird, how can someone so weak be a player? Were you new to Yggdrasil? Rex asked, his tone more curious than mocking. The boy gave a simple nod. I'm Riku. I only started playing Yggdrasil a day before it shut down, he said seriously, his eyes steady. The 12 others exchanged uncertain glances, their expressions clouded with confusion. They clearly didn't understand the terms being thrown around. That's cool, so what do you want with me? Rex asked, a curious look in his eyes. Riku stepped forward slightly. We heard news of a powerful, strange, godly-looking man going around slaughtering all the monsters in the forest and attacking humans. We thought you might be one of the demon gods, he said. His tone was calm, but there was a flicker of something else beneath it, jealousy. For all his composure, Riku couldn't help but feel a pang of envy at just how effortlessly godlike Rex appeared. I just arrived in this world. I have no interest in fighting anyone's battle before I've even had the time to find a place to call home, Rex said with a light smile. Then why did you kill all the monsters in the nearby forest? Riku asked. Rex's eyebrow lifted, not at the question itself, but at the unexpected feeling that stirred within him, annoyance. It crept up suddenly, sharp and out of place. He didn't like being questioned, not like this. But he quickly caught himself. That wasn't like him. He prided himself on being reasonable, someone who took a step back, examined every angle, and thought before reacting. Rex's eyebrow lifted slightly, caught off guard by the unexpected question. How did you know? Rex asked, his mind already piecing things together. That man in the so-called white armor, on closer inspection, it was platinum. And the lowly beside him, it all lined up. If the weakest member among them was truly a player, then there was only one conclusion to draw. He was standing before the 13 heroes. You said, lowly, that term doesn't exist in this world, the young man replied. Rex stared at him, momentarily speechless. Then, slowly, he nodded in understanding. Weird, how can someone so weak be a player? Were you new to Yggdrasil? Rex asked, his tone more curious than mocking. The boy gave a simple nod. I'm Riku. I only started playing Yggdrasil a day before it shut down, he said seriously, his eyes steady. The 12 others exchanged uncertain glances, their expressions clouded with confusion. They clearly didn't understand the terms being thrown around. That's cool, so what do you want with me? Rex asked, a curious look in his eyes. Riku stepped forward slightly. We heard news of a powerful, strange, godly-looking man going around slaughtering all the monsters in the forest and attacking humans. We thought you might be one of the demon gods, he said. His tone was calm, but there was a flicker of something else beneath it, jealousy. For all his composure, Riku couldn't help but feel a pang of envy at just how effortlessly godlike Rex appeared. I just arrived in this world. I have no interest in fighting anyone's battle before I've even had the time to find a place to call home, Rex said with a light smile. Then why did you kill all the monsters in the nearby forest? Riku asked. Rex's eyebrow lifted, not at the question itself, but at the unexpected feeling that stirred within him, annoyance. It crept up suddenly, sharp and out of place. He didn't like being questioned, not like this. But he quickly caught himself. That wasn't like him. He prided himself on being reasonable, someone who took a step back, examined every angle, and thought before reacting. When I arrived in this world, my level was reset to level 1. So, I had to start grinding to level up, Rex said lightly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Reset, Riku echoed, his voice quiet with confusion. He didn't know what to make of that. After all, he had only ever been level 1 when he arrived in this world. If you want to level up, then join us. The evil gods seem to be NPCs from Yggdrasil, Riku said. Rex scratched his head, genuinely unsure. Should he join them? He wasn't against the idea, but something about it gave him pause. On that note, didn't new players only appear every 100 years in this world? That thought stuck with him. When did you arrive in this new world? Rex asked, his curiosity now fully piqued. Last week, Riku said. Rex stood there, speechless for a moment. A week? It had only been a week, and this guy was already out here playing the hero. I'll have to refuse, Rex said calmly as he rose to his feet. The moment he moved, tension flooded the air. Every member of the group stiffened, their bodies subtly shifting into combat stances, hands drifting toward weapons. They were ready to fight. Why, these evil gods have done nothing but bring suffering to the people of this world. Riku shouted, his voice filled with urgency. I figured as much, just by their title, Rex replied, his tone calm but edged with sarcasm. I just don't trust you or your allies. From the moment they learned I was a player, they were already thinking about killing me. His expression shifted into a mocking smile. Tell me, aren't you the evil gods, just playing hero? In that instant, a flash of light split the air. A sword burst forward, tearing through the space between them and striking Rex with devastating force, or so it seemed. The moment the blade should have connected, it slammed into an invisible barrier. All the force behind the strike was reflected outward, and the sword was flung backward like a toy, its power completely neutralized. Rex turned his gaze toward the figure in platinum armor. The armor was nothing more than a puppet, remotely controlled. The one pulling the strings was then the Platinum Dragon Lord, operating from a distance. How? The voice stammered through the armor, laced with disbelief. With that attack, Rex said flatly, I'd place you at around level 70. As for how, I have a passive skill that renders me completely immune to all attacks, skills, spells, and abilities that fall below a certain quality threshold. He paused, then added mockingly, in other words, your gear isn't even good enough to scratch me. It was clear he wasn't amused by being attacked. Not at all. But you said your level just reset, the Dragon Lord's voice echoed in disbelief through the hollow suit of armor. Even though levels didn't formally exist in this world, they were still used as a rough measure of someone's strength by those who knew of levels. If Rex claimed his level had reset, that meant he should have been significantly weakened upon arriving. Yeah, Rex said with a calm shrug, but I wasn't known as the strongest player for nothing. The moment those words left his mouth, something shifted. Everyone's attention flicked to Riku, whose expression had suddenly changed. There was something off, subtle, but clear enough to make the others uneasy. I knew I'd seen you before, you're Rex Tempest. Riku asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Rex smirked. That I am. In the very next instant, he vanished. Before anyone could react, before a single spell could be cast or weapon raised, Rex reappeared right in front of the platinum armor, and then he kicked. The force behind it was staggering, a blow that revealed the overwhelming stat difference, the kind of strength only someone with a stat of 100 could display. With unmatched force, the armor was sent crashing into the ground. The impact was so immense that it triggered a shockwave powerful enough to blast everyone else off their feet, scattering them like leaves in a storm. A deep crater tore through the earth where the armor once stood, and at its center lay the platinum armor, half buried in the debris, motionless. Such power, the lowly, a true vampire, whispered in horror, her voice trembling as she stared at the devastation caused by a single attack. The entire hero party had been thrown back, not by the strike itself, but by the aftershock of a blow meant for only one of them. And even that, they couldn't withstand. She had reacted fast enough to raise a barrier just in time. It absorbed most of the impact, shielding her from the worst of the force. But even so, the shockwave still hit her hard. Her legs trembled slightly, proof that even with her quick response, she hadn't escaped unscathed. You thought that was something? Rex said, his voice calm but laced with threat. Wait until I actually use a spell. With a casual wave of his hand, a powerful gust of wind swept through the battlefield, clearing the thick cloud of dust that had settled from the impact. As the air cleared, the scene became terrifyingly clear. Rex stood at the bottom of the crater, one foot planted firmly atop the Dragon Lord's armor, now dented and partially crushed beneath him. His gaze locked onto the vampire Loli, who instinctively took a step back, eyes wide with fear. She blanked. Her mind froze, and her legs gave slightly beneath her. She nearly fell back, only barely catching herself, when Rex appeared right in front of her without warning. As an undead, fear should have been a distant memory, something her kind no longer felt. Yet the aura radiating from Rex clawed at her instincts, forcing fear into her undead body like a pulse she couldn't ignore. I have no interest in killing you or anyone else, Rex said, his voice low but firm. You leave me alone, and I'll do the same. I didn't start this, you did. He towered over her, standing at 7 feet 7, while she barely reached 4 feet 3. The difference in presence alone was suffocating. Yes, Rex was stupidly tall, and that was by design. He had chosen this height for a simple, tactical reason. In 1v1 combat, height mattered. Especially in the early game, when players were still figuring things out, his size often gave him the upper hand. Reach, angle, presence, it all played a role. Sure, there was a trade-off in speed, but Rex had handled that easily with the right stat distribution and class synergy. For him, the benefits far outweighed the cost. Why yes, the vampire muttered. She was known as Landfall, and her voice was barely more than a whisper. Her eyes, however, couldn't help but wonder, not on Rex's face, but on something swinging casually at eye level. He didn't seem to care or notice, standing with the same relaxed posture as before. Good, Rex said, and then he vanished. Landfall's eyes widened, frantically scanning the area, trying to track where he had gone. She knew he hadn't teleported, there was no surge of mana, no spatial distortion. And yet, he was simply gone. She couldn't comprehend it. How could someone move that far, that fast, without using mana-enhanced movement? But there was no time to dwell on it. She rushed back to her allies, quickly kneeling beside the nearest one. With practiced focus, she began casting healing spells, her magic spreading through the team, stabilizing each of them one by one. A moment later, the Platinum Dragon Lord rejoined her. His once damaged armor was now shockingly restored, pristine and unmarred, as if the devastating impact had never happened. 12 comments 0 vote. Chapter 5. Rex, he was the strongest player in Yggdrasil by a long shot. Back in the city, the group of 13 stood gathered across from Riku, who now recounted everything he knew about the man that had left them speechless. By a long shot, one of them echoed in disbelief. Riku nodded. There were tournaments held in Yggdrasil, competitions to determine the strongest player from each realm. The winners would receive a unique job class that many considered broken. That class was called World Champion. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle before continuing. But even before earning that title, Rex was already strong enough to defeat the winners. He only became more terrifying after claiming the class for himself. Riku's gaze dropped toward the ground, sifting through memories. He didn't stop at one. Rex became the world champion of all 9 realms, unlocking a hidden class known as Champion of the 9 Realms. But he never acquired it. He hesitated for a moment. He said the cost was too steep. Learning that job class would have forced him to sacrifice too much power, and Rex, he never settled for less than the peak. He was part of an infamous evil guild, a group so powerful it had another world champion among its ranks, Riku said, exhaling deeply as memories surfaced. They were feared across the game. So feared, in fact, that the largest coalition in Yggdrasil history, 1,500 players, all level 100, joined forces to take them down. He looked up, a bitter edge to his voice. And they failed. That guild only had 42 members, and not a single one of them needed to lift a finger. Their defenses, traps, and summoned forces wiped out every single attacker. Riku sighed, recalling the story he had read countless times. He'd saved for months just to join the game, only to log in a day before it ended. It still stung. That's hard to believe, one of the others muttered. How strong would you say Rex was, in his prime? The Dragon Lord finally asked, his tone unusually serious. Powerful, Riku said quietly. He could face 100 level 100 players without breaking a sweat. He fought monsters that normally required entire guilds to defeat, and he did it alone. He paused for a breath. It's said he traveled to lands no one else dared enter, facing creatures that other players couldn't even survive encountering. And after seeing him in person, it all makes sense. Riku shook his head slowly. Seeing how powerful he is, even after having his level reset, there's really nothing more to say. He's just too overpowered. You said he was part of an evil guild? The Black Knight asked, his tone low and cautious. Riku nodded. They were well known for their ambitions to take over the world, Riku said softly. Feared by most major guilds, they were a force that rarely, if ever, lost. He paused. There was one exception. A mine was stolen from them once. It was a major loss, but they responded by completely destroying the guild responsible. Rex led that attack himself. He glanced at the others, his voice quieter now. After that, no one dared to provoke them again. While Riku continued recounting every detail he could remember about Rex, the man himself was far from the city. Now fully clothed, Rex walked calmly down a quiet road, a map in hand, eyes scanning its markings as he read and navigated without hurry. Wild magic and runesmith. These should be what Rex focused on, so he planned to head toward the Dragon Kingdom. If he remembered correctly, the Beastman country would begin attacking them for some reason, making it a perfect source of XP. He smiled at the plan, but the smile quickly faded. The Dragon Kingdom didn't exist at this point in time. Rex frowned heavily, his plans needing adjustment. He turned his attention to runesmith instead. From what he recalled, runesmithing would begin to fade around the era of the evil gods, which meant this was the ideal time to try and learn it, while the knowledge and techniques still lived. Wasting no time, Rex made his way toward the city near the land of the dwarfs, nestled deep within the mountains. Along the way, he questioned those he encountered, asking specifically about the dwarfs. Through these scattered conversations, he discovered something important. The dwarf who had been with Riku was none other than the king of the dwarfs. The dwarf king had joined the battle against the evil gods after their kingdom had come under attack. One of the evil gods had launched a devastating assault, forcing the dwarves to flee for their survival. Many members of the royal family had perished in that attack. But the dwarf king had stepped forward, refusing to run any longer, determined to put an end to the rising threat of the evil gods. Rex paused for a moment, lost in thought, before heading toward the ruins of the dwarves' former homeland. When he arrived, he was met with the aftermath of destruction, chaos still lingering in the broken terrain. It couldn't have happened more than a few weeks ago. The damage was recent, the land still raw with the traces of battle and retreat. I guess I should stay low-key to avoid trouble, Rex thought, forming a quick plan. Without hesitation, he held out his palm and activated one of his naturally acquired skills, wasting no time as he began to set his idea into motion. Hearken, O soul's long-fallen king! The divine summons you forth from the abyss. Rise anew as my unwavering disciples. Cast aside the shadows of your past, for your destiny lies in the light of your new deity. Embrace the benediction of the divine, God's blessing. The words spilled from Rex's mouth before he even realized what he was saying. It wasn't planned, it simply flowed out, as though the chant had been buried somewhere deep within him all along. The moment he finished, his HP began to drop, a steady drain that caught his attention immediately. At the same time, the dust and scattered remains of the former king of the dwarves began to stir. Bit by bit, the fallen monarch's body reassembled, bones, flesh, armor, all reformed by divine force. Even with the body in an incomplete state, the power of a god was absolute. The restoration was complete in mere seconds. And the cost? 10 HP. The cost should have been greater, far greater. But it seemed the Eye of Infinity played a role in lessening the burden. While its effect wasn't as potent on HP as it was on MP, it still managed to reduce the cost by 1/10. In other words, the resurrection should have cost Rex 100 HP. Not that it would have been fatal. Rex regenerated 1% of his HP every second, meaning he could go from 1 HP back to full in just 100 seconds. He would have been fine regardless. Even more so if he used MP to enhance his passive recovery rate, something well within his ability. With that in play, not even a critical HP drop would be a concern. The fallen king wasn't just reformed, his entire runesmith gear set was restored alongside his body. The intricate armor, forged by the ancient craft of his people, shimmered as if it had never been touched by death. The sight earned a nod of approval from Rex. As the dwarf's body fully regenerated, he dropped to one knee without hesitation. I greet my lord, the dwarf said solemnly. Rex casually waved off the words. He had wanted loyalty. When he invoked God's blessing, that was adding into the skill. There were 3 reasons the revival had such a high cost, each tied to the weight of what had been done. The first reason for the high cost was the condition of the body. The dwarf king's remains had been reduced to nothing but dust. Reforming a complete body from that state was far from a simple task. The second reason was the dwarf's own rejection of the revival. He hadn't agreed to return under such unnatural circumstances, but Rex had overridden that, forcing him back to life through sheer divine authority. The third reason was Rex's specific request. He wanted the dwarf to return in his prime, fully restored, and equipped with all of his runesmith gear. These 3 factors combined drove the cost to 100 HP. And the result? The resurrected dwarf stood at 100%, as strong as he was alive. Level 35. No need for the kneeling. I seek knowledge on the runes. So you'll be my rune teacher, but before we begin, I'll also need a martial arts instructor, a magic caster teacher, and even a dragon versed in wild magic, Rex said with a calm smile. He wanted to deepen his understanding of magic, and that meant not relying on the system as much. It was his first step toward evolving beyond the game's limitations. If he could learn spells independently, he wouldn't be bound by predefined spell slots. More than that, it opened the door to creating spells of his own, unique abilities not even YGGDRASIL's mechanics could restrict. Understood, my lord, the Dwarf King replied respectfully, lowering his head. And so, they traveled. The first stop was a nearby city, where Rex made his way into a bar, looking for information. Inside, he approached a group of drunken locals, casually asking questions about the strongest martial artist still alive. It didn't take long for the conversation to turn into a heated argument, with each man shouting over the other, defending their favorite warrior. Rex then posed a simple follow-up: were the strongest martial artists of the past stronger than the ones today? That question sparked even more chaos, but it was exactly what he needed. By listening closely and piecing together the names repeated with reverence, Rex was able to identify the best of the best, the martial artist who stood above all others. As for martial arts in this world, they were made up of techniques that did not exist in the game. Similar abilities in Yggdrasil were known as skills, typically acquired by players with warrior-type classes. When a martial art technique was used, it could temporarily boost physical stats, sharpen the user's mind, or grant combat advantages. While magic casters relied on tier magic, martial arts were seen as the warrior's magic techniques tailored for melee combatants who excelled in close-quarters battle. Eventually, Rex arrived at the graveyard of a legendary warrior known by the title 1/. This man had earned fame after performing a feat that resonated throughout the land. He had once cut down a dragon with a single strike. While it hadn't been a fully grown dragon, the achievement was still remarkable enough to make his name known far and wide. More than just his feat, he had also mastered 24 martial arts, a number unmatched by anyone else. It stood as a world record, proof of his dedication and unparalleled mastery. His level had reportedly been in the 50s, due in part to the fact that he carried the blood of a player. The next target was the strongest human spellcaster ever born in this world. He was known as Merlin, a legendary figure, born from the union of a native and a player. Before his death, he had reached level 65, an impressive feat by this world's standards. Merlin wasn't just powerful, he was a genius, feared and respected across the land. But what truly set him apart was the innate talent he was born with, an ability that made mastering magic almost effortless for him. In this world, some individuals are born with unique abilities, known as talents. These gifts vary wildly, from walking on water to copying any spell you witness and using it as your own. Merlin had one of the more powerful kinds, an affinity for learning and mastering all forms of magic, making his growth seemingly limitless. His death left a gap in magical knowledge that few, if any, could hope to fill. The next target was a dragon, a far more difficult pursuit. Searching for the remains of a fallen dragon took Rex deep into the mountains, through uncharted terrain and long-forgotten paths. It wasn't easy, but after a few months of focused searching, he finally found what he was looking for. He stood before the ancient remains of a dragon lord, a being that had fallen over 300 years ago, during the legendary battle against the 8 greedy kings. This was the boundless sea dragon lord, a creature whose power had once rivaled that of a level 90 player. Reviving it, however, came at a steep cost. It required 400 HP, a price Rex couldn't pay all at once. Instead, he was forced to revive it gradually, sacrificing his life force bit by bit as he slowly brought the dragon back to life. Once everything was in place, Rex ignored the rest of the world and focused solely on learning, absorbing as much as he could from the 3 masters he had gathered. Thanks to Divine Instant, his ability to comprehend all forms of magic made the process remarkably efficient. The skill allowed him to identify, break down, and analyze spells, enchantments, and magical constructs across all known schools of magic. In other words, given enough time, Rex could learn everything, so long as his job classes permitted it. But that was fine, he had plenty of ways to level up, and with that goal in mind, he set his sights on his next hunt, a demon god. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 6. Boom. The giant, one of the 13 heroes, moved without hesitation. With his shield raised, he intercepted a massive, razor-edged blade that came crashing down toward Riku, shaking the ground like thunder. Riku didn't pause. He jumped onto the giant's back and launched forward, closing the distance with the towering, building-sized praying mantis. Flipped, landing on top of the razor-sharp blades for an arm, the mantis hand, before shooting forward towards its head. With a single clean strike, his blade, faintly glowing with enhancement runes, sliced through the creature's neck. Its head dropped with a heavy thud, the massive body collapsing behind it. But there was no time to breathe. From afar, a spider nearly as large sprang into view and fired a thick web of enchanted silk, gleaming faintly with mana. It tore through the air, aimed straight at him. Then, without warning, the mantis stirred. Now undead, its severed body twisted unnaturally as it lashed out and cleaved the incoming web apart. Riku didn't flinch. Rigret landed smoothly on the mantis' shoulders. With a wave of her hand and a muttered command, the creature stood once more, lifeless, yet bound by her will, ready to support them in the fight ahead. "You got careless," Rigret said with a smile, her tone light despite the chaos around them. She drew her sword and cleanly sliced through another strand of webbing shot by a second spider. Without missing a beat, she tilted her head to the side, effortlessly dodging an arrow that flew past her. It struck the spider dead on, catching the creature off guard and dropping it in an instant. "A little warning next time," she muttered, not bothering to glance at the elf behind her. "A simple arrow like that wouldn't have killed you," came the calm reply from the elven princess, who stood with her bow drawn. She didn't need a quiver, her MP formed the arrow, shimmering with magic as it took shape on the string. "We're facing a demon lord, take this seriously," the Dark Knight said, his voice sharp as he cleaved through a massive, horned beetle with a single, brutal swing. "I think you're overly serious," the giant replied, leaping forward just in time to intercept an attack aimed at landfall. His shield caught the blow with a heavy crack, and with a grunt, he shoved the monster back, forcing it to stumble under its own weight. The group's teamwork was unmatched. They fought without hesitation, each move confident, every strike backed by the certainty that their allies were watching their flanks. Their healer remained at the rear, calmly maintaining the flow of recovery spells, patching wounds before they could slow anyone down. From above, their long-range attacker controlled the battlefield with deadly precision. Magic users filled the sky with spells, ensuring no winged insect could descend unchallenged. Among them moved a legion of summons, some serving as distractions, others powerful enough to kill even the lowest-tier insects, which still held strength equal to level 30 threats. The Platinum Dragon Lord, their strongest warrior, stayed at the rear. He conserved his power, saving every drop for the true threat, the evil god still hiding behind his swarm. Riku, meanwhile, only grew faster. To the others, it looked as if battle itself was sharpening him, pushing him further with every clash. And in a way, it was true. With each kill, Riku silently gained XP, his power steadily climbing with every fallen foe. Bit by bit, the group cut their way through the endless swarm until at last, the final insect fell. Standing before them now was the source of it all, the evil god. A grotesque fusion of bee and ant, its massive body that made it look alien-like. Every creature they had slain had come from it. Now, cornered and trembling, it stared at the approaching heroes with wide, fearful eyes. Behind it loomed an enormous egg, partially cracked, and twitching. "Just in time," Landfall murmured, eyes narrowing. "I'd hate to see whatever's about to hatch from that. You lesser lifeforms, you dare to slaughter my children." The monstrous insect god roared, its voice echoing with divine fury. "First, you killed the Supreme Ones, and now this. Your actions will not be forgiven." With a screech that split the air, it summoned a massive creature, an enormous horned beetle dragon, its armored body gleaming with layered chitin and dark magic. A level 70 summon, born of desperation, it wasn't meant to win, only to buy time for the egg behind it to finish hatching. The Platinum Dragon Lord moved first, clashing with the summoned beast in a violent eruption of force. But the creature's power was overwhelming. Realizing the threat, the entire group sprang into action, uniting their strength in a coordinated assault to bring it down before it could delay them any longer. Boom! An arrow struck the egg, and in the next instant, it exploded in a blast of shattered shell and light. The evil god froze, its many eyes wide in shock as it turned toward the source of the attack. There stood the elven princess, bow lowered, her expression cold and unbothered. You thought we were just going to ignore the giant egg? She said, her voice sharp with disdain. Without waiting for a reply, she shifted her aim. The battlefield didn't need her support, the others could handle themselves. But she knew exactly where her arrows were needed next. Bastard! The evil god roared, its voice twisted with pure hatred. It suddenly rose to its full height, revealing dozens of twitching legs beneath its bloated body, a sight that sent a chill through some of the heroes. Then it charged straight at the elf, fury blazing in its eyes. But it didn't get far. A single arrow struck its forehead, and the monstrous insect collapsed, twitching once before falling still. In the end, it had been mostly a summoner. Its true strength had never been its own. Why isn't the summon disappearing? Riku asked, narrowing his eyes as the horned beetle dragon remained on the field, its heavy breath fogging the air. The others glanced around, confused. If the evil god was dead, then what was that thing? And more importantly, had they truly killed their real enemy? In the name of the Supreme Ones, you will all pay. From the lifeless husk of the evil god, a hand burst through its hardened shell, cracking it open like brittle armor. Emerging from within was a slender female figure, now clad in a full suit of gleaming, organic armor that revealed her perfect figure. Her death triggered her combat form. Riku shouted, eyes wide with sudden realization. His warning came too late. In the moment of distraction, the horned beetle dragon lunged forward, driving its massive horn into Riku's stomach. Blood sprayed, but Riku gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. With raw determination, he grabbed hold of the beast, forcing it down, muscles straining as he pinned the monstrous summon in place despite the pain tearing through his body. Hurry! Riku shouted, eyes fixed on the evil god's shifting form. Her transformation was nearly complete. They couldn't afford to fight both her and the dragon at once. If taking this injury gave them the edge, he'd take it without hesitation hundreds of times over. The Platinum Dragon Lord struck, his blade plunging into the dragon's thick armor. But it wasn't enough. The creature roared, refusing to fall. Riku moved without pause, seizing the hilt and driving the blade deeper with all the strength he had left. The steel tore through chitin and flesh, finally piercing the beast's core. The horned beetle dragon let out a final shriek before collapsing, its body vanishing in a swirl of dissolving magic. The kill gave him a surge of XP, another level gained, but there was no time to care. As the summon faded, it revealed the brutal cost, a gaping hole torn through Riku's chest. He staggered, but the healer was already moving. Their spells lit up the air, closing the wound as best they could, though their faces were pale with exhaustion. After countless heals during the siege against the insect swarm, and now this, they were approaching their limits. And the real battle had yet to begin. You annoying lesser lifeforms! The evil god roared, her voice laced with fury. She lashed out with a whip, the strike arcing through the air toward the healer. The attack came too fast, too suddenly. No one had time to react. The whip hit its mark. The healer was thrown backward, a sharp scream escaping her as a deep gash tore across her abdomen. Blood sprayed. Her organs spilled from the wound as she hit the ground hard, body trembling. For a moment, everyone froze, shocked. Go! Riku snapped, the first to break from the paralysis gripping the group. Without hesitation or fear, he sprinted toward the enemy. His reckless charge did more than show courage, it gave the healer a precious moment to cast her healing magic, stabilizing herself, and forced the evil god to redirect her focus. It was risky, but it was the right move. Boom! The giant appeared in front of Riku just in time, blocking the whip that had been aimed straight for his neck. It wasn't reflex, he didn't possess speed faster than the bug. He had simply guessed the evil god's intent and activated a movement skill to intercept the strike. The impact sent the giant flying backward, his massive frame crashing into the ground. Riku slid beneath him, rolling to his feet just as Rigrid arrived, flanked by her undead. They surged forward, positioning themselves as shields, buying the others time. Arrows screamed through the air, followed by a barrage of spells and flying swords. The battlefield lit up with power. The Dark Knight quickly caught up, falling in beside Riku and Rigrid without a word. A heartbeat later, the Platinum Dragon Lord soared overhead, one sword in hand, his eyes locked onto the evil god as he closed the distance with terrifying speed. Rigrid, Riku, the Dark Knight, and the Platinum Dragon Lord charged forward, pushing through under the cover of countless attacks, waves of summoned creatures, and undead warriors. It was an epic advance, coordinated chaos unfolding with precision. Together, They struck from all sides, leaving the evil god no room to breathe. Their relentless assault confused her, breaking her rhythm, forcing her to defend instead of retaliate. It was a battle fought with total trust, a moment where each placed their life in the hands of the others. A single mistake meant death for them all. Then, without warning, Vermin Bane Landfall appeared before the evil god, her voice cutting through the battlefield like thunder. She unleashed a spell none had ever seen before. A greenish gas erupted around the evil god, thick and hissing with power. She screamed. The corrosive cloud clung to her form, eating away at her armor and skin, causing her to stagger and writhe in agony. For the first time in the entire battle, the evil god looked truly wounded, her divine form melting under the weight of a spell she had no defense against. Though everyone was stunned, it was clear that Landfall had just created that spell on the spot. They didn't waste the opportunity. They pressed in, working together seamlessly to give him space to cast again and again. Bit by bit, the evil god's HP was chipped away, worn down through coordinated strikes and relentless magic. But victory came at a steep cost. One by one, the party reached their limits, collapsing from exhaustion or mana depletion. Yet the weakest among them was still standing. Riku. He ignored the pain tearing through his body, the blood loss, the trembling in his limbs. His body screamed for him to stop, to fall back, but he refused. With every clash against the evil god, he screamed through clenched teeth, forcing himself to keep moving. The enemy was only a breath away from death, just a little more, and it would all be over. But then came the realization. Riku glanced at his status. His HP was dropping faster than the evil god's. At this rate, he would die long before she did. Lesser lifeforms. Today marks the beginning of this world's punishment for defying the Supreme Ones. The evil god roared, her voice echoing with wrath. She made a choice, one born of fear. She would take Riku's blow if it meant ending him. He scared her more than she dared admit. Her palm drove into his chest, piercing flesh, bone, and heart. At the same moment, Riku's blade carved into her shoulder, dragging downward toward her heart before it finally stopped, trembling in place. Riku gasped, blood spilling from his mouth as his knees buckled. He tried to push his body for one final thrust, but it was no use, he was too far gone. His injuries were too severe. But they had a healer. Because everyone had drawn the evil god's focus, the healer had found the space she needed. She had managed to restore herself, and now, just in time, she returned to the fight, her hands glowing as she reached for the one who still refused to fall. Riku suddenly felt his wounds closing, warmth rushing through him as healing magic took hold. Buffs followed, strength, speed, clarity, all cast in rapid succession. There was no time to think. The evil god began to withdraw her bloodied hand from his chest, but Riku moved first. He summoned every last ounce of power he had, lifting his sword and bringing it down in one final, desperate strike. The blade tore through her chest, cleaving through her heart, then split her body clean in half. Silence followed. Riku stood still, a massive hole in his chest where his heart should have been. His sword slipped from his fingers. His eyes slowly lost their light, and he fell backward, lifeless. But then, something flickered. It seemed, he had leveled up at the last possible moment, just as death was about to take him. And with that level up, his HP had fully restored. "He's alive," the healer said after checking Riku's body, her voice steady but soft. The words washed over the battlefield like a breeze, and the tension broke. Everyone exhaled in relief. They had feared the worst. "We did it," Landfall murmured, trying to push herself upright. Her limbs shook with exhaustion. She had burned through every last drop of her MP. And with the newly created spell still unstable, the strain had been even greater than expected. "That you did," came a voice, calm and amused. And honestly, it was impressive. The air seemed to freeze. Every head turned in horror to see Rex sitting casually on a rock, his chin resting in his palm, watching them as if he'd been there the whole time. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 7. "That you did," came a voice, calm and amused. And honestly, it was impressive. The air seemed to freeze. Every head turned in horror to see Rex sitting casually on a rock, his chin resting in his palm, watching them as if he'd been there the whole time. What are you doing here?" Rigret asked, unease creeping into her voice. "I came to kill the evil god," Rex said with a faint smirk. "So don't mind if I do." As the words left his mouth, Rex activated God's blessing. At the cost of 300 HP, time violently rewound, 30 minutes into the past. Rex quickly downed several health potions, barely keeping himself upright. Without them, the toll would have killed him on the spot. In an instant, the battlefield changed. The evil god stood tall once more, and the 13 heroes now found themselves facing the insect army again. But the 13 heroes remained unaffected, untouched by the flow of time. Rex had chosen to exclude them from the rewind. Their body and mind remained the same before time was turned backwards. What kind of power is this? The words escaped Landfall's lips, but the sentiment was shared by all. Horror filled their eyes as they watched the impossible unfold. They never even heard of someone or something with the power to control time to such a scale. Rex didn't spare them a glance. He simply snapped his fingers. In an instant, every insect on the battlefield dropped dead. The entire swarm vanished like dust in the wind. Silence followed, heavy and unreal. Everyone stood frozen, stunned by the sheer scale of what had just happened. All except Riku, who remained unconscious. That single gesture had leveled Rex up 3 times. Like I said, I'm the strongest, Rex said as he stepped forward, now standing before the evil god, who looked at him with an expression not of anger or amusement but of recognition. You're one of them. Why are you supporting those of this world? The evil god cried out, unable to comprehend why someone who was clearly a player would side with what he saw as lesser beings. Unlike your creator, I'm at the peak of the food chain. To me, even an evil god is no different from those of this world. Rex replied calmly. With a wave of his hand, he struck the evil god, the force of it sending the being flying, knocking it out cold without resistance. Rex then turned his attention to the egg and, without hesitation, used God's blessing to begin its hatching. Boom! The egg exploded, and from within emerged a massive insect-like monster. Its grotesque body was a fusion of countless lifeforms. Multiple heads lined its shoulders and back, a dragon, ant, bee, lion, human, and more. It was as if the evil god had forcibly merged the strongest traits of various creatures in a failed attempt to create the ultimate life form. The monster let out a deafening roar, then lunged forward and threw a punch at Rex. Rex effortlessly dodged, his expression calm. The creature, equal in power to a level 95, continued to chase him, wild, relentless, and desperate to land a hit. But despite its overwhelming physical power, it was unrefined. The chaotic fusion had stripped it of discipline and awareness. It was slow, uncoordinated, and, most notably, it showed no signs of using magic. It was brute force without balance, strength without control. Its fist was truly devastating, powerful enough to level a small town with a single blow. But what was power if you couldn't land a hit? What was strength in the face of someone who simply had more? Rex had seen all he needed to. Without hesitation, he drew a sword from his inventory and, in a single, fluid motion, cut the monster in half. The creature dropped immediately, killed in one clean strike. Despite its monstrous appearance and sheer size, the unstable fusion had left its HP extremely low, making it powerful in form but fragile in substance. Well, I'm heading out. Use message to contact me next time before you deal with an evil god. I might show up, Rex said casually, just before vanishing with the evil god in tow, moving far too fast for any of them to follow. He took the evil god, Rigrit muttered, unease creeping into her voice. None of them could read Rex. Was he an ally, or an enemy, simply retrieving what he wanted for reasons unknown? If he wasn't on their side, why did he keep sparing them? But if he truly was an ally, why go about it in such a roundabout, cryptic way? They turned their attention to Riku. Maybe only a player could hope to stand against someone like Rex. Finally, level 15. That's 30 stat points and 30 skill points, Rex said, satisfied. I should start boosting my magical attack and defense capabilities. He paused, eyes narrowing as he looked at the evil god in his possession. She was called an evil god, but in truth, she was no god at all. Just a powerful being elevated by fear and title. So Rex began to wonder. What would happen if he made her into a true god? What if he empowered her, gave her the strength to create powerful insect offspring, and then used those creatures as an XP farm? She was valuable, more than anyone might realize. Especially once Rex discovered she could give birth to queens, and those queens could birth entire swarms of insects. With her under his control, Rex would never need to worry about leveling up again. He could simply sit back, harvesting endless XP, all while continuing to learn everything there was to learn. And so, he did exactly that. 5 years passed. Total level, 36. Racial level, godly human. Job level, sorcerer 152 per level. High sorcerer 104. Wizard 152. High wizard 102. Space-time wizard 5-6. Space-time sorcerer 5-5. Limitless 5-8. Monk 104. Marital lord 104. Striker 5-5. World champion 5-8. World disaster 5-8. Vector monarch 5-8. Eye of infinity 5-8. Apex singularity 5-1-2. Fighter 152. Keymaster. Spiritual 152. Farmer 15. Insect farmer 10. Beast tamer 5. Insect tamer 5. Blacksmith 152. Runes master 104. Runesmith 5-7. Wild magic caster 5-8. Available skill points 0. Approximate status. HP 175. MP 100. Phi ATK 100. Phi Def 100. Agility 125. Mag ATK 125. Mag Def 100. Resistance 100. Special ability 101. Total 1026. Looks like this is going to be my highest level for some time, Rex said, glancing over his current stats before shifting his gaze toward the hundreds of queen insects surrounding him. Each one looked at him with deep, unwavering respect. Not a single one showed the slightest concern that Rex had just killed billions of their offspring. For 5 years, Rex had cultivated an XP farm, breeding the queen insects and harvesting their children to fuel his growth. It was efficient, brutal, and effective. He had gone even further, elevating each queen to the rank of a god, enhancing their strength beyond mortal limits. Now, every one of them stood at level 100, powerful enough to be classified as world bosses. They were all low gods. Rex had attempted to elevate them to mid or even high-rank gods, but he lacked the necessary resources. It wasn't that the skill itself consumed HP or MP directly, it was that the requirements to activate it demanded those values be met. To create a low-rank god, Rex needed at least 100 HP and 100 megapixels. To create a mid-rank god, the threshold jumped significantly, 1000 HP was the bare minimum. The more HP and MP Rex possessed at the time of using this skill, the stronger the resulting god would be. A low-rank god created while Rex has overwhelming HP and MP could easily rival, or even surpass, a standard high-rank god. But for now, all of them remained low gods, powerful but still bound by the current limits of his strength. Anyways, Rex went on to remove the simple clothing he had been wearing and began equipping his true gear. The moment the pieces locked into place, his overall stats surged, reaching levels that even in Yggdrasil, he had never imagined achieving. His total stats are now at 1401, a number that once felt impossible. Despite how overwhelming it sounded, the stat boosts from gear weren't as massive as one might expect. A full set of high-tier gear typically added around 500 extra stat points, and that was considered top tier. Back in Yggdrasil, Rex's best setup gave him a plus 500 bonus, bringing his total stats to around 1000. The thing about stats was that a player had to build their character carefully. At best, doing so would cap their base stats at around 400. For comparison, Momonga's stats without gear sat in the 400s, while Rex, back in Yggdrasil, had managed to push his base stats to around 490, nearly reaching 500. But what truly made Rex overpowered, what allowed him to stand toe-to-toe with world bosses, wasn't just his stats. It was his gear. His equipment pushed him beyond the limits of most players, giving him the edge he needed in every fight. Now, after spending years mastering runesmithing and gathering an abundance of rare resources, he had created the perfect set of gear for himself. By inscribing runes into divine grade, equipable items, he enhanced them far beyond their original design. This customization elevated his equipment to a level of precision and power tailored entirely for him, gear that could only be wielded by someone like Rex. Wide and magic, Hallow Purple. Rex extended his palm toward the hundreds of queen insects he had raised. With a single cast, he unleashed a swirling purple orb, a mass of energy that tore through everything in its path, ripping apart even atoms. The queens didn't even have time to react. They were annihilated instantly. Even their combat form, triggered upon death, was bypassed completely. There was nothing left, not even a trace to be restored. No magic in existence could bring them back. Yes, Rex had mastered all the magic his job classes offered, even the ones that required high-level thresholds. How? Simple. He had created a gear that artificially increased his level. While the item didn't grant stat points or skill points like natural leveling through XP, it did allow him to meet level-based requirements, unlocking advanced abilities and spells he wouldn't normally have access to. Rex had learned every skill under Apex Singularity. The skill list wasn't long, but each one was potent and complete in its own right. He had done the same for Eyes of Infinity, World Champion, Vector Monarch, and Wild Magic. That alone was an achievement few could ever hope to replicate. Before he had removed his gear, Rex took one final step. He carefully used every spell, one by one, committing the casting flow, structure, and energy patterns to memory. He made sure to fully understand how each spell worked, how it responded to his will, and how it could be recreated. Once finished, he removed the gear, sealing away access to the spells that required certain level thresholds. But by then, it didn't matter. Thanks to the experience he gained from casting them firsthand, Rex had already learned them, not as a system user, but as a spellcaster who understood the essence behind each spell. Widened magic, it wasn't a spell itself, but a form of enchantment cast on top of a spell. Known as a metamagic enhancement, it altered how a spell behaved when used. These enhancements varied in effect. Some increased a spell's tier, others expanded the range of its conjured object. Some even allowed elemental attributes to be added to otherwise neutral spells. In the case of widened magic, it specifically increased the range of a spell. Take Hallow Purple, for example, an overpowered spell by nature. While devastating at close range, its power diminished the farther it traveled from its caster. It was at its strongest the moment it formed, and every meter it moved caused that power to drop. However, by casting widened magic as an enhancement, Rex was able to extend its range without losing as much force. The usual drop-off in destructive power became significantly slower, allowing Hallow Purple to remain lethal even at a distance. 7 comments 0 vote. Chapter 8 Bonus Chapter. Well, I've learned all there is to learn, although it sucks there wasn't a job class for martial arts, even after I mastered every last technique out there, Rex said as he left the underground world he had created. It was here he had spent the past 5 years, doing nothing but training, refining his knowledge, mastering skills, and reaching the pinnacle of what this world could offer. Now, he was curious. Had the heroes managed to defeat the evil gods by now? Honestly, Rex didn't have much to do for the next 200 years, he was simply waiting for Momonga. It was the least he could do, given that he had abandoned him. That lingering guilt weighed on him more than he liked to admit. It was also why he remained hesitant to make any major changes to the world. What if he did something that altered the timeline, causing Momonga's arrival to be pushed even further into the future? A few weeks later, a black-haired woman wearing a hoodie stepped into a dimly lit bar. She paused near the entrance, eyes scanning the room with quiet intent. After a moment, her gaze locked onto a white-haired man seated at the back. He was strikingly handsome, calmly sipping a cup of alcohol, the faint glow of the tavern light casting sharp shadows across his face. She made her way toward him. The man glanced up, raising an eyebrow in curiosity as she approached. Without a word, she took the seat opposite him. There was a brief silence as she took a breath, gathering herself, and then finally, she spoke. "I've been searching for you for the past 3 years. You told us to message you, but every attempt failed," Rigret said softly. "It did," Rex blinked, genuinely confused. "Here I thought you all just hated my guts. Go ahead, try messaging me." Rigret nodded slightly, then raised 2 fingers to her temple, casting the spell. "Message. Rex Tempest, can you hear me?" But the spell never connected. It simply vanished, as if Rex didn't exist. "Oh, looks like I'm immune to that too," Rex said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Well, the reason your spell doesn't work on me is simple. The caster or the spell itself has to meet a certain level threshold to affect me. Otherwise, it just gets nullified before it can do anything." He leaned back, genuinely impressed with the depth of his passive defenses. "But you didn't really need me," he added with a smile. "You guys defeated the evil gods, and because of that, new empires are rising. Even the Adventurers Guild was born thanks to what you all accomplished. Riku is dead. The words came suddenly, causing Rex's eyebrow to rise. Riku and you weren't the only players who arrived in this world on that day, she continued, her voice low. One of Riku's close friends appeared as well. He grew strong, incredibly strong. She paused, her gaze steady on Rex, eyes filled with a quiet, hopeful weight. But they didn't see eye to eye. And because of that, they were forced into a battle, one that ended with both of them dead. For years, I searched for your tracks. If anyone could bring him back, it's you. Please, she said, bowing her head, her voice filled with quiet desperation. I can't do that, Rex replied with a light sigh. The words struck Rigret like a blow. She looked up at him, eyes wide, shocked, staring at someone she believed to be all-powerful, now telling her no. You're asking me to force someone back to life. Someone who gave everything he had to this world, for what? So he can go through it all again. Rex said softly, his tone calm but firm. I didn't like Riku much, but I respected him. Let him rest. He leaned back slightly, eyes distant. Back in my world, there's a saying, die a hero, or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. His gaze returned to Rigret. At the end of the day, Riku's choosing to stay dead is his decision. You need to respect that. Don't force someone to live against their will. Think about it, if you were in his place, wouldn't you hope to wake up back home? Rex wanted to go on, but he paused as Rigret was crying. I know all that, Rigret said, her voice trembling. He was the weakest in our party, but within a year, he became the strongest. The only reason he's dead is that he shielded us. We held him back. We were a burden. That you were, Rex replied quietly, letting out a soft sigh. Fate's just cruel like that. Rigret looked up at him, surprised, not expecting such blunt honesty. Back where we're from, almost every player is born with the potential to reach level 100. They can do it in a matter of weeks if they put in the effort, Rex said calmly. Meanwhile, in this world, getting past level 30 is a challenge. Rigret looked at him, her expression twisted in uncertainty. I don't get you, just what are you to us? She asked, her voice soft, her eyes filled with a complex mix of awe, confusion, and doubt. As of now, I'm a gentleman as lending an ear to a beauty, who is blaming herself for something she really shouldn't be, Rex said with a light smile. There was a long pause, quiet and heavy. Then, softly, Rigret asked, did you have a family back home? Of course, Rex said lightly. I didn't magically appear out of nowhere. He rested his head upon his palm, eyes distant as he recalled memories long buried. I had a loving family. Honestly, I was blessed compared to most. I had 2 older brothers who stepped up and raised me after our father passed away. It was his death that pushed me, made me start dreaming about power. The power to take control of my own fate. He let the silence linger for a moment before gently shifting the focus. How about you? He asked, calmly changing the subject. They were killed by the evil gods, it's the main reason I trained so hard, to get revenge, Rigret said quietly, her gaze dropping. We were so different. While you dreamed of taking control of your fate, I dreamed of something as small as revenge. Don't compare me to you, Rex replied, his tone light. I came from a world where people dreamed big. I just got hit with the realization that one moment your loved ones can be smiling right in front of you, and the next, an accident leaves their body parts painted across your face. Rigret froze, stunned into silence by the raw weight behind his words. That's tough, she said softly. It was, Rex replied. The neighbor was throwing out some old junk, something exploded. The blast hit my father. He was standing right in front of me. I was just thrown back, barely hurt. He paused, his voice steady despite the weight of the memory. She was an old lady, died on the spot from the shock. But that was the wake-up call I needed. That's when I realized I couldn't just leave my life up to chance, so I started training. To take control, and you became the strongest, she murmured, almost in awe. And you reached the limit of human potential. Hell, you might even be the strongest human alive, Rex said with a light smile, his gaze steady. But you keep selling yourself short. He looked directly into her eyes. You're amazing, far more than I am. I had advantages. You fought without them. I was lucky, you weren't. Rigret's eyes widened slightly, stunned by the sincerity in his voice. She hadn't expected such words from him, especially not directed at her. Stop putting yourself down, Rex added gently. We players, compared to you, you're more impressive. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, eyes locked, two worlds in quiet understanding, sharing a silence that said more than words ever could. I don't like sex scenes and would not be putting too much thought into them. You guys, because I know many wise men wanted it. I didn't proofread what is below, so don't be too harsh on me. A door to a room burst open, with Rex entering with Rigret, who had her legs and arms wrapped around him while they madly kissed. Rex quickly closed the door behind him and made his way to the door where he laid Rigret down. Rex removed his shirt, leaving Rigret to do the same. In no time, they were in their birthday suit, with Rex on top of her, lightly kissing her body, while his hands roamed her body, playing with her body, causing her to let out pleasure-filled moans. Rigret Pav, you're no normal human, I said softly. I wasn't normally like this. I came off as a tomboy to those around me, yet before Rex, he was making me so girly, like. I hated it, but I couldn't resist his touches. It made me feel things I never felt before. Maybe it was because I was a virgin, and this was what sex was like for everyone, but I doubted it. Yeah, I'm an evolved human. I broke the human race limits. Rex said with a light smile, causing my eyes to widen. He was truly an amazing man. Never has there ever been a human evolved, unlike the other races, which could evolve. The human races, such as elves, dwarfs, and other such humans, couldn't evolve. I wanted to ask him how, but my mind went blank as Rex's mouth touched the nipple. I let out a moan, something which I tried to bite down on. But it was pointless. As Rex's tongue came into contact with my nipples, it was like I was hit by a spell. Luckily, or to my disappointment, Rex didn't focus on my breast for long as bit by bit, he slowly made his way down my body. My eyes widened, realizing what he was about to do, but I wasn't ready. I hadn't fleshed up, but I couldn't resist his touches, which made me feel so good. As his lips came into contact with my pussy, I couldn't control myself. It was like my hands grew a mind of their own, and took a hold of Rex's hand. I didn't want him to pull his head back, it just felt too good, and the pleasure only grew once Rex's tongue came into contact with my pussy. What followed was what I can only call traveling to heaven. I had my first ever orgasm, that alone made me want to tape out just how heavenly it felt, but Rex wasn't done. After giving me a moment to rest, he went on to stab his godly dick into my mortal pussy. I had wanted to stop him. After all, we didn't cast the protection spell, but by the time I had thought of that, it was too late. He was already inside me. What followed was the weirdest and most pleasure-filled moment of my life. If before I went to heaven, this next ride took me somewhere beyond heaven. I love you, too, Rex said, catching me off guard. I had not even known I was speaking, but with his words, it made me realize the fact my legs were wrapped around him, with me hugging him tightly as if I didn't want him to stop. It was embrace-meetin', but at the time it brought me a great deal of pleasure hearing his words. I couldn't control myself as my tongue fell out as I had another orgasm. You're amazing. I'm going to make you my wife, Rex said, his face twisting in pleasure. Each word only made me hug him tightly, not wanting to let him go as I had another orgasm. I wanted to kiss him, but I instead kissed his neck as I wanted him to keep talking, although I would never let him know that. You like being praised. You keep getting tighter, Rex said teasingly, causing me to hide my face in his chest. I'm going to impregnate you. Only a fool would ignore the beautiful woman you are, Rex said, and instantly, I had another orgasm. I held him tightly, not wanting him to go back on his promises. I pressed my lips against his, sharing a messy kiss, just for the kiss to pause as a load of hot stuff painted my side white. Tired, I let go of Rex, unable to go on. Rex caught me and gently tested on the bed, before he brought his dick before my face. Although I was tired, I opened my mouth and went on to take the godly rod inside me, and instantly I was hooked. The taste of his cum was amazing, like the sweetest sweet in the world. Even without the cum covering his rod seemed to be enchanted with some spell. Taking it into my mouth brought forth pleasure which caused me to take the 8.5-inch tool into my throat, for it only tasted better the deeper it went. I didn't even rest when Rex took me by the hair and began to treat me like a tool. For some reason, it only increased the pleasure, causing me to have a few more orgasms until Rex unleashed a load deep down my throat. It was only then I realized just how much cum Rex was unleashing, but I didn't have enough time to think over that since I fell asleep the next instant. I had gone far beyond my limit that day. 11 comments 0 vote. Chapter 9. Rex. I reached across the bed, still half asleep, my fingers searching for the warmth that should have been there, the warmth of Rex, who had fallen asleep beside me. But the space was empty. My eyes blinked open. I sat up, my heart tightening with a sense of wrongness. He wouldn't just leave, not after a night like that. Not after everything we shared. I threw on my clothes in a rush, a simple cleaning spell leaving me fresh as if the night had never happened. Without wasting another second, I bolted downstairs to find the owner of the inn. But then, the blow came. The innkeeper, casual and unaware of the storm he'd just unleashed, informed me that Rex had left sometime during the night. My chest tightened, my hands curled into fists. My eyes burned, not with sorrow, but with wrath. So that's how it is, I muttered through clenched teeth. Used me, and ran. Tears welled at the corners of my eyes, fury drowning out the ache. With red, blazing eyes and a boiling heart, I stormed out, set on one thing alone, finding him, and making him take responsibility. Meanwhile, miles away, Rex walked alone along a winding road, its destination unknown. The path stretched ahead into the horizon, flanked by hills and silence. He didn't have anything urgent to do for the next few years, so he had made a simple decision: travel the world and absorb everything it had to offer. There was still so much he hadn't seen, and with his strength, nothing could truly stop him. Besides, he had heard rumors, a dragon lord the size of an island. Whether myth or fact, he wanted to see it with his own eyes. Of course, Rex wasn't just wandering aimlessly. With his finely tuned senses, he could feel the pull of powerful auras. The road he was on led in that very direction, towards something strong, something worth investigating. He had no idea where it would take him, but he intended to follow it all the same. A few days later, Rex heard it, a massive, thunderous roar that echoed across the sky. Looking toward the source, he saw it, a magnificent white dragon, massive in size and breathtaking in presence, soaring from the direction of a distant empire. Its scales shimmered like polished ivory under the sun, radiant and imposing. With wings spread wide, the dragon flew straight toward him, its speed incredible for its size. It halted midair above the road, eyes glowing as it glared down at Rex. "Who are you, and what brings you here?" The dragon roared, its voice shaking the ground beneath. But even as it spoke, it grew visibly tense, its eyes narrowing as it scanned the high-quality gear covering Rex's body, gear far beyond anything it had ever seen before. "I'm Rex Tempest, a traveler," Rex said calmly, offering a friendly smile. "I felt your aura and came to see for myself. I mean you no harm." But the moment the words left his mouth, the dragon's posture shifted, fully alert, tension crackling in the air. "The Platinum Dragon Lord told me about you," the dragon said, its voice colder now, laced with caution. "State your intent." "I have no intent," Rex replied casually. "New world, nothing to do, so I decided to travel." "Might I know who I'm speaking to?" The dragon's eyes narrowed, growing sharper with suspicion. "I am the Brightness Dragon Lord," it said coldly. "Well, it's a pleasure to meet you," Rex said with a calm smile. The dragon paused, speechless. It had fought alongside the other dragon lords against the 8 greedy kings. It had witnessed firsthand the arrogance of players, their unchecked pride and destructive tendencies. But now, hearing Rex speak and sensing no malice in his aura, it understood what the Platinum Dragon Lord meant. Rex was not like the others. "You're really not like the other players," the Brightness Dragon Lord said softly. "Not all players are the same," Rex replied, his tone light and relaxed. "Just like I wouldn't expect all dragons to be the same." He offered a calm smile. "The players you met back then, they were the small fries. Of course, they got drunk on power once they realized how strong they were in this world." The dragon slowly descended, landing before Rex with a graceful thud. For a long moment, it simply stared into his eyes, studying him in silence. "So," the Brightness Dragon Lord said at last, voice measured, "what do you want?" Its gaze narrowed slightly. "You don't expect me to believe you're truly here just because you're bored?" The question hung in the air as Rex offered a slightly awkward smile, one that didn't quite deny it. "But I am," Rex said lightly. I'm also looking for clues about how I came into this world. The dragon stared at him for a long moment, silent and thoughtful. Then, without a word, its massive body began to shift and shrink, bones reshaping, scales fading. Moments later, standing before Rex was a handsome, blonde-haired young man, regal in bearing and composed in presence. "You must be powerful," he said. "Only the strongest dragon lords can take on the forms of other races." "You know quite a lot," the dragon lord said, raising an eyebrow. "From what I've heard, dragons of your world are very different from ours." "I brought back the boundless sea dragon lord," Rex replied casually. "Had him teach me wild magic." The dragon lord's eyes widened in shock, his composed expression faltering for the first time. "Where is he now?" the dragon lord asked, his tone steady, though curiosity flickered beneath it. He didn't know much about the one called the boundless sea dragon lord, but he knew this: a dragon lord doesn't come back to life easily, especially not one that had been dead for over 2 centuries. "He's dead," Rex said with a quiet sigh. "I'm what you'd call a solo player. I don't work well with others." He paused, eyes narrowing slightly with thought. "The dragon wanted to stay dead. I forced him back, and in the end, I let him return to his eternal sleep." There was a moment of silence. Rex exhaled, his expression caught between self-awareness and regret. "I keep telling myself I'm the ruthless type, but sometimes, I guess I'm not as ruthless as I want to be." "You really are the strongest player," the dragon lord said in disbelief, his voice tinged with awe. Rex grinned. "Of course. We can have a small spar if you're feeling lucky." The words had barely left his mouth before the dragon lord accepted, wasting no time in taking up the challenge. Rex smiled and took a few steps back, creating space between himself and the dragon lord. Without hesitation, the brightness dragon lord charged forward. Even in his human form, a weakened state, his strength was no joke. He was on par with the boundless sea dragon lord, a being equivalent to a level 90 player. His fist shot toward Rex's face with incredible speed, only to freeze midair, stopping just short of impact. Surprised, the dragon lord quickly shifted his stance and began moving around Rex, launching punches from every angle, testing for a weakness, a blind spot, anything. But no matter where he struck, every punch stopped just before making contact. It was as if an invisible wall surrounded Rex. The dragon lord stepped back, shocked, unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed. "It's called infinity," Rex said with a light smile. "I bring the concept of infinity into reality. Infinity exists all around us, I just make it real." The dragon lord's eyes widened, instinctively leaping back. Without a word, he shifted into his true form, his massive white-scaled body towering over the landscape. There was no hesitation. He opened his jaws wide and unleashed the dragon race's ultimate attack, Dragon's Breath. Rex's eyes widened. This wasn't a normal breath attack. It was a beam of condensed light, unleashed at light speed, a pure, focused blast of power that tore through space with impossible precision. Rex couldn't react. Against the speed of light, even he was far too slow. By the time he blinked, the beam had already reached him. And yet, it stopped. Frozen in place, the beam hovered inches from his face, unable to pierce the invisible barrier that protected him, infinity. "What the?" Rex muttered, stunned. To him, it had all happened in an instant. The attack was there one moment, halted the next. But then he reminded himself, light speed wasn't just fast. It was the universe's speed limit. At such speed, time itself bends. Even Rex, at his best, could only hope to match the speed of sound. So it made sense that he hadn't been able to react. You couldn't even react to the attack, and still, it couldn't get past your skill. The dragon lord said in disbelief, eyes wide with shock. "It's not a skill," Rex replied calmly. "It's a spell." He let out a soft sigh, his tone thoughtful. "And by the looks of it, not even you can reach that level of speed. If you could, well, I'd be at a loss for words." "Well, it's my turn," Rex said with a grin. Instantly, the brightness dragon lord shifted back on guard, sensing the change in atmosphere. "This spell is called Curse Technique. Blue," Rex continued, raising a hand and pointing toward the sky. At the tip of his finger, a blue orb began to form, calm at first, almost harmless in appearance. But within seconds, it swelled in size, growing rapidly as its pull intensified. The very fabric of space and time bent around it, drawn inward, distorted and stretched as if the world itself was being dragged toward the heart of the spell. The ground around Rex shattered, breaking apart as if a void had suddenly torn open above him. Everything nearby, rocks, wind, even light itself, was being pulled inward, dragged toward the growing blue orb in a desperate attempt to fill the emptiness it created. The brightness Dragon Lord's eyes widened as he too felt the overwhelming force pulling at him. He spread his wings and tried to fly away, but it was useless. How could he escape through space, when space itself was being consumed? What is this? The Dragon Lord roared, panic lacing his voice. While the infinity you faced earlier is infinity in its basic state, blue is what happens when I strengthen it, he explained. It infinitely converges space to a single point, creating a void-like effect that generates powerful fields of attraction. Once you're sucked inside, you'll be crushed at the atomic level, Rex said with a grin. This spell doesn't rely on attack stats, it draws power from the amount of MP I have, and trust me, I have a lot. His job class, Limitless, wasn't built on brute force. It didn't need high attack power. The only requirement was having enough mana to cast the spell. Attack stats were meaningless. Okay, I surrender, the Dragon Lord roared, his voice strained as he struggled against the pull. He had tried everything, even shattering his body into light to escape. But it was too late. If he had done it from the very beginning, maybe he could have outrun the gravitational pull. But now, he had no chance. Rex let out a soft laugh as he calmly cancelled the spell. The pull vanished instantly, and the Dragon Lord collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily, every part of him straining from the effort it had taken just to try and escape. I see why you're the strongest, the Dragon Lord muttered, still too shocked, and exhausted, to move. Haha, no, Rex said with a light smile. What you saw was just a fragment of my power. He smirked, clearly enjoying the moment. Back where I'm from, I used that very same spell against enemies, and it had no effect. There was this giant, wielding a sword so hot, its heat rivaled the sun. It was able to bypass infinity. Rex grinned. Of course, I defeated him, and took the sword for myself. Wanting to show off, he reached into his inventory and pulled out Surtur's sword, a massive, radiant blade still shimmering with residual heat and power. 10 comments 0 vote. Chapter 10 Bonus Chapter. The Dragon Lord's eyes widened, unable to hide the greed that flared behind them. As a dragon, his sense of smell was finely attuned to magical value, and the moment Rex drew the weapon, he knew that Rex wasn't lying. This wasn't just a powerful item. It was beyond any world item he had ever encountered. You want it? Rex asked with a casual shrug. I don't really have much use for the sword. But if, one day, you can offer me something worthy of the trade, then sure. That's the most valuable thing I've ever laid eyes on, he said softly, his voice filled with reverence. I highly doubt anything in this world could equal it. Unable to resist, he shifted back into his dragon form and slowly stepped closer, drawn in by the overwhelming presence of the weapon, eager to see the treasure up close for himself. You have a point, Rex said thoughtfully, before putting the sword away. The moment it vanished, the Dragon Lord's disappointment was palpable. Don't make me regret showing off, Rex added with a sigh, shooting the dragon a side glance. Snapping back to his senses, the Dragon Lord let out a quiet breath and nodded. After a moment of silence, he turned and motioned for Rex to follow. Without another word, he led him toward the empire he had built. A dragon ruling over an empire of humans, what are you planning? Rex asked softly, his tone more curious than accusatory. This empire was built to raise the next heroes, the Dragon Lord replied calmly. I'm not much of a leader, but I gave birth to its royal bloodline, hoping to nurture the next generation of powerhouses. He let out a faint sigh. But my son is a disappointment. So, I plan to have more children. If none of them prove worthy, I'll turn to their children. And if even my grandchildren are useless. He paused, his voice losing any pretense of attachment. Then I'll just leave. It would mean this entire empire was a waste. Rex nodded slowly, understanding the logic. Then let me come back in the future to see how things play out, Rex said with a smirk, turning away. I don't want you getting any weird thoughts about my body. The remark left the Dragon Lord speechless, caught off guard by the casual jab, but he made no move to stop Rex as he walked away. Sometime later, Rex stood atop a mountain peak, overlooking the vast expanse stretching out before him. The wind was sharp, the air chilling cold. As he slowly looked upward, his eyes landed on a massive shadow drifting across the sky. There it was, the heavenly dragon. A being of myth and power, its body so immense it was said to rival the size of an island. It soared across the heavens like a living continent, majestic and terrifying all at once. "It's truly massive," Rex muttered, eyes fixed on the colossal form drifting through the sky. The heavenly dragon, sensing his gaze, slowly turned its head. For a moment, their eyes met. Then, the dragon shifted course, flying directly toward him. With every beat of its wings, its size became more overwhelming, until its body completely blotted out the sky, casting a vast shadow over the mountain peak. "You're a player." The voice echoed directly into Rex's mind, deep, ancient, and heavy with power. It made sense. If the creature had spoken aloud, the sheer force of its voice would have shattered a person's eardrums. "That I am," Rex replied with a light smile. "I've heard you're the oldest dragon, and I came seeking knowledge, specifically, why we players were brought into this world." The heavenly dragon gave a slow shake of its massive head, the motion stirring the wind into violent gusts that howled across the mountaintop. "I do not know the reason behind your kind's arrival," the dragon said, its voice echoing through Rex's mind like the rumble of distant thunder. "But I know this, it is tied to the primordial dragon lord." Rex nodded in understanding, eyes narrowing with quiet curiosity. "Thank you for the information," Rex said calmly. "Do you know where I can find this primordial dragon lord?" "I do not," the heavenly dragon replied. "After the first player arrived, over 400 years ago, the primordial dragon lord vanished, along with him." Rex fell silent, eyes narrowing in thought. After a moment, he gave a small, respectful nod. "Still, thank you." With that, Rex turned to leave, the wind shifting softly behind him as the massive dragon remained still, watching him go. "My knowledge doesn't come free," the heavenly dragon said, its voice rumbling through Rex's mind. Rex stood there, momentarily speechless. With an exaggerated sigh, he reached into his inventory and tossed a divine grade item toward the massive creature. The heavenly dragon caught it effortlessly, clearly pleased, and with a single beat of its wings, it took off, vanishing into the sky like a passing storm. Rex rolled his eyes and turned away, continuing his journey in search of the primordial dragon lord. So, 400 years ago, a player arrived, only to vanish alongside the strongest being in the verse, Rex thought, his steps steady as he followed the pull of the next powerful aura. "I have to wonder, just how powerful was that dragon to pull players into reality? To turn a game into reality on such a grand scale, even to give world items their power." He narrowed his eyes. World items can nullify other world items. So did that dragon possess a power even beyond that? Something unique, something I haven't seen yet. That dragon, he was a world enemy level boss. Makes sense why he ignored the battles between players and dragons. He saw himself as above it all, Rex thought, his gaze fixed on the horizon. And so, he traveled. For the next 100 years, Rex journeyed across the world. He set foot on every mountain, sailed across every sea, soared through the skies, and even ventured deep into the underground world. Along the way, he came to know of the great powers that shaped this world, beings like the Elder Coffin Dragon Lord, and many others hidden in shadow and myth. But his true focus never wavered. He was searching for the primordial Dragon Lord, and the elusive Dragon Emperor, the one so many blamed for the arrival of players in this world. Yet, no matter how far he went, he couldn't find either of them. They remained phantoms of the past, powerful, mysterious, and just out of reach. As for why everyone believed the Dragon Emperor was responsible for the arrival of players in this world, no one could give Rex a straight answer. Everyone seemed certain that, just before the first player appeared, the Dragon Emperor had done something. But what that was, no one could say. Regardless, Rex made his way back to the Dragon Empire. His goal this time was clear. He came seeking the brightness Dragon Lord, one of the oldest Dragon Lords still alive. If anyone knew the truth, or at least had insight into why so many Dragon Lords despised the Dragon Emperor, it would be him. Unlike the Heavenly Dragon, which kept to itself, the Brightness Dragon Lord didn't. But the Brightness Dragon Lord was long gone. Rex's return to the Dragon Empire proved fruitless, his lead had gone cold. It seemed his carefully built trail of research had failed. To make things worse, he couldn't sense the Dragon Lord's presence anywhere. Either he had taken a non-draconic form, or he was simply outside Rex's range of perception. As he approached the city gates, a voice called out sharply. "Halt! You must pay to enter the Dragon Empire." One of the guards barked, stepping forward to block Rex's path. Rex let out a quiet sigh before casually pulling out a gold coin from Yggdrasil. The moment it caught the guard's eye, his expression shifted, caught completely off guard by its weight and shimmer. He quickly stopped Rex and hurried off to verify its authenticity. It didn't take long. The guard returned in record time, now wearing an uneasy expression. He was just a gatekeeper, after all. He knew better than to offend someone who could casually toss around a coin of that caliber. Without hesitation, he allowed Rex to enter, especially after Rex refused the offered change. The guard watched him disappear through the gates, then immediately turned and rushed off to report the incident to his superiors. This was still a young empire, and someone showing up with a gold coin from an unknown origin could stir complications. If he kept quiet and it turned into something serious, he'd be the one held responsible. The commander, upon receiving the report and the strange gold coin, wasted no time in escalating the matter to his superiors. One thing was certain about the Dragon Empire: its people were fiercely loyal to their empress, the great-granddaughter of the brightest dragon lord. Word quickly reached the palace, and soon, the empress herself sat upon her throne, delicately examining the coin that had been handed over by the gate guard. She was a blonde-haired loli, adorably dressed and radiating a cuteness that could melt stone. Every guard in the throne room stood perfectly still, outwardly disciplined, but screaming internally at the sight of their empress focused so intently. Her innocent curiosity only amplified her charm. Yes, it was no secret. This empire, for better or worse, was absolutely filled with lolicons. "Who gave you this coin?" the empress asked in her usual soft, innocent tone, her eyes still fixed on the glinting surface. But as she looked up to hear the response, she caught the uncomfortable gaze in the soldier's eyes. Her expression didn't change, but inwardly, she sighed. Why are all humans like this? She thought. Are they all just lolicons? Someone named Rex Tempest, the soldier replied, trying his hardest to maintain a professional posture. I'll have him brought before you immediately. He straightened his back, doing his best to suppress the flustered energy surging within. She was just too adorable. This was someone he knew, someone all the soldiers in the Empire would gladly lay down their lives for. No, I'll go see him myself, she said flatly, her tone leaving no room for argument. She had no desire to remain another second under the gaze of so many lecherous eyes. With a flash of light, she vanished, activating a third-tier spell, and shot through the skies of the Empire like a comet. Her destination was clear. He didn't even bother to hide his aura, she thought, narrowing her eyes as she honed in on the source of power. Soon, her gaze fell on a tranquil pond nestled within a serene patch of wilderness, and there he was. Rex sat at its edge, calm and relaxed, enjoying the beauty of the natural world as if he had all the time in the world. A little girl, Rex muttered, raising an eyebrow as he sensed her presence. Despite her youthful appearance, her power level rivaled that of a level 30, impressive for someone so small. But given her lineage, it only made sense. She was a descendant of the brightest dragon lord, after all. I'm Dradion Auriculus, she said as she gracefully landed before him. My great-grandfather once spoke of the great player, the one who stands above all others. As her feet touched the ground, her form began to shift, golden light wrapping around her as she transformed into a stunning woman in her early 20s. Despite her youthful appearance, she was over 40 years old. No need for all the bowing and formalities, Rex said with a relaxed smile. Come, sit down. Dradion blinked, briefly stunned by his casual tone, but after a moment, she nodded and gracefully walked over to sit beside him. I was looking for your great-grandfather, Rex continued lightly. During my travels, I learned quite a bit about him. Since he's one of the oldest beings alive, I thought he might know something I'm missing. Oh, my great-grandfather taught me everything he could before he disappeared, Dradion said, her voice soft. Her posture was stiff, clearly uneasy sitting so close to someone as overwhelmingly powerful as Rex. Despite her royal bloodline, his presence made her feel small. Among the things he shared, was information about players. Oh, Rex tilted his head slightly, interest flashing in his eyes. Then, do you know how we players ended up in this world? Well, my great-grandfather didn't know the full story, Dradion said quietly, her tone careful. But from what he explained, about 600 years ago, the Dragon Emperor attempted to overthrow the primordial Dragon Lord, trying to claim the title of the leader of the Dragon Lords. She glanced at Rex briefly before continuing. He did something that forced the primordial Dragon Lord to summon someone from another world. That act left him severely weakened. She paused, her voice lowering. I don't know what happened afterward, only that on that day, both the player and the primordial Dragon Lord vanished, and the Dragon Emperor was left heavily injured. I see, Rex muttered, absorbing the weight of her words. So, how are the primordial Dragon Lord and the heavenly dragon related? And why does he have such a cool-sounding name? That's because he's the ancestor of all dragons, Dradion replied calmly. The heavenly dragon and the Dragon Emperor are just a few of his children. She folded her hands in her lap as she continued. The primordial Dragon Lord didn't need anyone else. Alone, he gave birth to them. But over time, many of his children were killed, mostly because of the players. Rex nodded slowly, his expression growing distant as he fell into deep thought, piecing together what little he now knew of the world's true history. By the way, Dradion said thoughtfully, one of the members from the hero party has been trying to track you down. I believe her name is Rigret. At that, Rex's eye twitched. Rigret, his one-night stand with her had been just that, a moment of pleasure, nothing more. The promises he'd made. To Rex, they were simply words spoken in the moment, meant to make things feel more magical, more alive, but never meant to be taken seriously. He had said he loved her, but if one were to translate his intent, it would have sounded more like, I love this. It wasn't personal. If Rex had to truly love everyone he'd been with over the past 100 years, then he'd be in serious trouble by now. Some women liked dirty talk, others, like Rigret, liked being praised by someone they saw as above them. It made them feel seen. Made them feel special. Rex understood that well, and he played the part. Thanks, Rex said lightly, his eyes briefly drifting as he sized up Dradilan's figure. She was undeniably stunning, a curvaceous beauty whose presence could charm anyone, regardless of gender or race. It was almost strange that her empire preferred her lowly form over this one. He let out a soft laugh, noticing how tense she still was. You don't have to be so stiff around me, he said, his tone light and easy. Relax a little. It's not every day I stand before someone who can bring the concept of infinity into reality, Dradion said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. And it's not every day I find myself sitting beside the most beautiful woman in the world, yet here I am, completely calm about it, Rex replied with a relaxed grin. Dradilan's eyes widened at his words. She turned to look at him, clearly stunned, unsure if she should believe what he'd just said. Why you can't just say such things so casually, Dradion stammered, her cheeks burning a vivid red. Say what? Rex replied with a soft smile. Since when was speaking the truth something that needed to be hidden? He leaned in slightly, his gaze locked onto hers. You're the most beautiful person I've ever met, someone I'd love to make my wife one day. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but the closeness of his words left her face glowing red, her composure unraveling under the weight of his sincerity. Wife, Dradion stammered, her voice cracking as smoke rose from her head. In a flustered panic, she jumped to her feet and quickly put some distance between herself and Rex. Ha ha, that was the best rejection I've ever seen, Rex said, bursting into laughter. Flustered and mortified, Dradion waved her hands rapidly, trying to explain herself through the embarrassment. I didn't reject you. I mean, Dradilan's voice trailed off as her face turned an even deeper shade of red, steam practically rising from her skin. Before she could gather her thoughts, Rex suddenly appeared before her, gently taking her hands in his. Then let's take our time, he said with a charming smile, his voice low and sincere. And in the future, when you're ready, we can bring the topic of marriage back up. Dradion stood there dazed, heart racing, completely thrown off by the warmth in his words. Later that night, Dradion lay sprawled across her bed, completely drained. Her body was slick with sweat from head to toe, her limbs heavy and unresponsive. Her tongue lolled out, eyes half rolled back from the sheer, overwhelming intensity of what she had experienced. As for Rex, he was already miles away, the matter of the Dragon Empire left behind without a second thought, another chapter closed as he moved forward on his journey.